Welcome to the conversation. I'm your host for today's episode, Anna Kasparian, and we are going to focus on the PRO Act today. Possibly the most consequential piece of legislation if you happen to be a worker in the United States, and the vast majority of us are workers in the United States. You might not have heard of the PRO Act, even though we've talked about it on the Young Turks quite a few times, but this is legislation that would be incredibly important in strengthening labor power here in the US. And luckily, I have two wonderful women to help me discuss this legislation. They're DSA organizers. Sydney Gazarian is a national climate organizer, founder of Democratic Socialists of America's Eco-Socialist Working Group, and contributor for DSA's Green New Deal and PRO Act campaigns. We also have Thea Riofrancos, who's an assistant professor of political science at Providence College, an Andrew Carnegie Fellow, and a Radcliffe Institute Fellow. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
So let's get started with the basics. For anyone who maybe didn't hear the details of what the PRO Act includes and why it's so important to pass this type of legislation. The House had passed the PRO Act last year. They have voted on it again. It's very easy to pass in the House. Of course, there might be a big problem when it comes to the Senate, which we'll discuss in just a few moments. But first, just talk about why it is that we need to pass the PRO Act in order to strengthen labor power here in the United States. Sydney, I'll begin with you.
Sure. So I think that it's pretty clear that our labor power, our power as workers, has been absolutely decimated over the last few decades. We know this because we're workers. We understand what it's like to be in the workplace. We understand that bosses suck. They exploit us, they abuse us. But we've also seen just how consequential this is when it comes to the pandemic. We've seen the difference between union workers during the pandemic who were able to win things like PPE and health and safety measures, and the difference between non-union workers who had a much more difficult time winning these same measures. And the consequences were huge. I mean, people died. This was significant, and I think this is really pointing to the need for us to build up labor power, for working power, and to have more people in unions and able to fight on the behalf of people everywhere in this country. And the PRO Act is a huge step towards that. It will undo some of the most punitive laws that are preventing worker power in this country. It would create a mediation and arbitration process to ensure newly formed unions reach a first contract. That's really important right now because even when workers succeed in forming a union, nearly half of newly formed unions fail to even reach a first contract. It also lifts the prohibition on secondary strikes, which prevent unions from going on strike in solidarity with other unions. It would undo right to work laws that are, undermining workers right now in 27 states. There's an endless list of things that the PRO Act would do, and it couldn't come at a better time, which is why the DSA is prioritizing this right now.
So Thea, as Sydney mentions, this would reverse the damage that was done with these right to work laws. Can you discuss why these right to work laws are so damaging to labor power in these 27 states?
Yeah, so right to work laws really undercut like the basic logic of what a union does, right? They allow workers to benefit from what a union wins without actually being a part of the union or paying dues to the union, right? And so you can see how these are essential from the right to actually undermine what unions are offering workers, and also to really undermine their political power, because those union dues are a big way that unions can organize for political demands and put pressure on the political system, right? So they're kind of trying to break that link, and they know that it's very effective. And I also note that the history of right to work traces all the way back to the Jim Crow South, when lawmakers knew that a key way to divide workers by race would be by undermining the power of unions. And they did that by starting to implement right to work laws. And then they took off around the country precisely because they were so successful at weakening unions.
Right. I mean, they certainly weaken unions because it discourages workers from joining the union and paying dues, because it forces the union to share the gains that were won by striking workers who might have even lost out on a wage as a result of striking, the employees who didn't pay into the union to help strengthen it, the workers who didn't go on strike and still managed to bring income for themselves. They would get to reap the rewards that were fought for and won by the union. And the reason why that's such a negative thing is A, it creates division among the workforce, and you really need solidarity. And B, as you mentioned, it incentivizes the refusal to pay union dues, which weakens the unions as the end result. And that's a very intentional part of that type of law. And as you mentioned, 27 states have currently enacted such laws. Let's talk a little bit about what went down in Bessemer, Alabama, where Amazon warehouse workers had just undergone a union drive. Now, unfortunately, they did not get enough votes in order to unionize there. But my understanding is that Bessemer, Alabama is a right to work state. How are these current laws kind of undermining the ability for workers to unionize in some of these states? Sydney. I think you might be muted.
Sorry about that. So I'm going to talk a little bit first just about Bessemer in general, and how much the PRO Act would have made a difference there. Amazon is a union busting company, and it's one of the most powerful corporations in this country, if not around the world. And these workers stood up against it and they fought for their rights. They were not successful, but it was a huge, it was very, very significant for what they did. However, it would have made a big difference for the PRO Act to have been enacted at that point. And that is because they engaged in typical union busting activities. They did a lot of things to discourage the union from being from taking place. They messaged their workers. They had lots of anti-union meetings. They had anti-union propaganda. All of these things work towards discouraging people from feeling like they can speak out and vote in favor of the union, because then they feel like they'll lose their job. And under the PRO Act, there will actually be penalties for workers, for employers who do this to their workers. There will actually be a system for making sure that their workers are not having their union's election interfered with in this way. And I think it's very, very clear with just like how horrible Amazon was in this, that obviously we need the PRO Act to pass in order for people to feel like they're able to collectively organize and win these things for themselves.
Exactly. I mean, just preventing the intimidation and the retaliation toward workers who are trying to organize and unionize.
We are onto something that is going to be amazing, but what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you, that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats who are gonna fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free healthcare for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer healthcare, debt-free college, and we are gonna get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're gonna do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Just Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a penny. Absolutely not.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
Yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course! So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is you take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and they plant a tree for you. Okay. Now you could also choose if you want to do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But literally every cent makes a difference here. It's Plant Your Change. And if you want to know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
Now, top. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
So now let's talk about what the DSA is doing, because I certainly agree with the organization's emphasis on organizing around this issue and applying pressure on lawmakers to ensure that they support it. What do those organizing efforts look like? What's the game plan? Thea, I'll start with you.
This is just, I think I can safely say, one of DSA's most exciting national campaigns that we've ever been involved in. It sort of builds on our previous efforts around the Bernie campaign, which was another national unifying campaign to support his candidacy. But this is something new because it's about bringing all chapters together to push on Congress to actually pass a law and also work directly with our comrades in the labor movement in order to make that happen. So what this looks like is 700,000 calls made to 5 target senators that are the 5 senators standing between us and passing this legislation. As you noted, the House has already passed it. What stands between us are the Democratic senators who have refused to commit to this. Because of those 700,000 calls and also all sorts of other ways that we're putting direct pressure with actions, with town halls. Already 2 of those 5 senators have moved from non-commitment to co-sponsoring the bill, which is a huge victory. And we have been doing this for 1 month. Sometimes I can't even believe that it's only been a month, right? So we have more time to this campaign. We're gonna keep the pressure on and we're targeting the other 3 that have not yet co-sponsored the bill.
I love that. I mean, I think that, this is just a testament to how organizing, applying persistent pressure can be incredibly successful. And as you mentioned, originally there were 5 Democratic senators who were holding out. 2 of them have now agreed to co-sponsor. My understanding is one of them is a conservative Democrat, Joe Manchin, who's giving us all sorts of grief in other areas as well. But it is a testament to how successful you guys have been in getting someone like Joe Manchin to sign on to this piece of legislation. Who are the other 3 Democrats who are holding out on this, Thea?
We have Warner, Kelly, and Sinema. And some of those are also a bit notorious for the way that they kind of flout like basic progressive values, such as a $15 an hour minimum wage, right? So yeah, we got 2 targets in Arizona and 1 in Virginia that we are putting all the pressure on.
So Sydney, one of the issues in the Senate, aside from corporate Democrats standing in the way, is that you would need more than a simple majority to pass the PRO Act. It's not something that could be passed through a budget or the reconciliation process where you could pass something through a simple majority. You, in this case, would need 60 yes votes on the PRO Act in the Senate in order to pass it into law. Is there any type of strategizing on that part of this issue?
Yes, we are thinking about that. Obviously, that's going to be a huge thing, and everybody's thinking about that right now because the filibuster is standing in the way of all progressive legislation right now. And so this is something that we have to take head on. This is something that we have to build collectively around. And right now we are prioritizing the PRO Act because we see this as something that can really invigorate the working class to fight for. This is something that we desperately need. Like I said before, the pandemic has proven just how desperately we need this to pass. But we also need it to pass because we are so underpowered. And by building a mass working class movement, we are going to be able to win bigger and bigger gains. And so hopefully by building this fight to pass the PRO Act and also by passing the PRO Act itself, we can continue to build a mass movement that's capable of taking on things and doing things like abolishing the filibuster and passing the PRO Act and eventually winning a Green New Deal.
I mean, when you think about workers' conditions, pay, all of these issues that the DSA is fighting on behalf of, that some of the progressive Democrats in Congress are fighting for. These are not issues that are really partisan issues when it comes to polling workers. When you talk to actual workers, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, progressives, it really doesn't matter. I think everyone can see what working conditions are like. They can see how there's ever-growing inequality in this country as a result of labor being so weakened. But somehow it still ends up becoming a partisan issue when we're talking about Congress. Now, that equation could change if progressives and conservatives found a way to really work together, and I'm talking about organizers in applying the necessary pressure to get lawmakers to sign on to this legislation. But that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. We are unfortunately a divided country, and I've been thinking a lot about, our own rhetoric over at TYT. What can we do to reach out to people who might overwhelmingly disagree with us on some social issues, but do agree with us when it comes to empowering labor unions, empowering workers. Thea, what would your advice be on that front?
I think that it really starts from the ground up, and I don't want to at all ignore the key importance of media outlets and also the importance of powerful people in society that might make have influential opinions. But I think to build on what Sid was saying, it requires solidifying real relationships at the local level that are within families, within neighborhoods, within labor unions, which themselves have been terrains and battlegrounds of partisan politics, right? We saw that unfortunately many members of labor unions may have voted for Trump, right? And that is because of the way that Trump was able to speak to and manipulate working class fears around deindustrialization and trade and things like that. But if you're not organizing locally across those divides, not just partisan divides, but other divides in our society, I don't think that we're ever gonna have the leverage to push lawmakers to change their position or just to flat out replace those lawmakers with ones that are more representative of working class interests. But I absolutely think, and this is work that DSA is doing in red states and rural areas in the South, wherever we have chapters where those partisan divides are real, we are trying to confront them, lean into them, and organize relationally around where there are areas of common interest in order to then expand what working class politics can achieve.
Sid, what has that experience been on the ground? Are people of different political ideologies receptive to some of the messaging coming from the DSA?
Yes. I think that that's one of the most exciting things that's been happening. I'm not gonna say that these conversations have been easy, but that's part of organizing. It means having real heart-to-heart conversations, real relational organizing. And the fact that we are doing this, we're engaging not only on phone calls, but door to door and in our neighborhoods and communities with people and having these conversations. We are moving people because people actually do, like you were saying earlier, understand just how much the deck is stacked against them. They They understand that working people are disempowered in this country, and they want the basic things that everybody wants. They want dignity, they want food, they want water, they want a good life. And we're fighting for that. And they're gonna fight for that too. And that's why we've been able to bring some people along with us.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly some optimistic news, and it really does differ from what most people would notice if they're just solely online, right? And Thea, there's no offense taken. I think that media is one thing, but grassroots organizing is far more powerful, and it's just something that's more persistent than just relying on the whims of talk show hosts and podcasters to share their opinions on things and hope that people are listening and are gonna do something about it. You guys actually put action behind what you're talking about. So don't worry, I'm not offended by anything you might think about media versus organizing. I think they're both important, but organizing, in my opinion, seems to reap the rewards because that's the actual hard work. You're on the ground, you're talking to people, you're having the difficult conversations. Now, some of that seems to get undermined or minimized through commentary online. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on that, Thea. It looks as though the left is incredibly divided itself, but is that true when it comes to the actual organizing on the ground?
No, I think that there is a real contrast there, right? If you go on Twitter, there's no shortage of like micro disputes between people with what are in reality often very marginally different opinions on things, but they get amplified because the algorithms of how these social media websites work and how they actually make profits for their owners is by amplifying disagreement and by people taking positions on one another and getting sort of likes and retweets because they're being increasingly polarized, right? And so I think that that experience is also very alienating to people. It makes it think that there's no way to convince people, that there's no way to persuade them, right? And I get worried that people learn about what politics is like through what's actually quite artificial environment that doesn't resemble very much face-to-face conversations, organizing, what it's like to go to a union hall or a DSA meeting and actually talk to people that the assumption is you have some shared ground with, right? And so I worry about the effects on that, but I also know that as soon as people move into different spaces, their kind of orientation towards politics can change quite dramatically once they kind of get offline, so to speak, for a moment.
Talk about what it's like to win through organizing, right? Maybe provide an example, but more importantly, talk about what it felt like, just the very real human reaction that you get once that organizing pays off. Because I think that, Jane McAlevey always talks about the importance of focusing on the wins. And the wins are important because it really helps to keep motivating people to volunteer their time, to become organizers, to be part of this fight. And so, Sydney, I'll start with you, and I really do want both of you to answer this question. Talk about, a situation in which the organizing actually paid off and what that felt like.
I mean, let's just talk about the PRO Act. We know that this is a long fight. This is a big fight ahead of us, but we are having small wins or big wins actually along the way. I mean, when we put in 500,000 calls during our week of action. We're now at 700,000 calls. We are going to have 1 million calls by the end of May. But through our week of action, we flipped Angus King and we flipped Joe Manchin. And we are an organization that, was very, very small only a few years ago. We're nearly 100,000 members now, but because we had this dedicated, organized work, we had real conversations on the phone with people in those states. We were able to convince people that weren't really thinking about the PRO Act, didn't know what it was, or maybe were on the fence to give their senator a call and tell them to support it. We were able to flip them. And those were real hard conversations that paid off. And both Joe Manchin and Angus King both cited our phone calls as the reasons why they flipped. And that is huge. That is a huge reason to be celebrating and to know that we are powerful when we come together, when we organize, when we focus and prioritize and fight for things that we believe in and that we can change collectively. There's nothing in the world that can replace that. That is why I'm an organizer. It's also to win a better world, but these small victories along the way make it worthwhile.
Thea, how about you?
Yeah, I kind of can't agree enough, because there's almost nothing like the feeling of working hard for something that people tell you is impossible, that people tell you you don't have the power to do, and even worse, that people tell you that you don't deserve, that you just don't deserve dignity and economic security, and a sort of living in a society that's dramatically better than the one we live in, and to actually show that no, we do have the power, we do have strategy and strategic thinking and skills and talent and organizing and people power, and we can put all of those together in a structured way and actually little by little and then more and more in an escalated way win what we know that we deserve, right? And there's just nothing like the feeling of that validation of your collective efforts, and to also know you could not have ever done this alone. It was you and many other people that made this happen. Maybe people that you might not meet, right? Or might not know, but you all had this shared goal, and it's just a thrill to know that you got one against the ruling class. They told you couldn't do it, and we did it, and we're gonna do more.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, we're so atomized right now as a result of technology, as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. And so I can imagine how invigorating it is to work together with others in order to accomplish a better country, a better world. So I'm so grateful for you ladies and for the DSA for focusing their energy and their attention on the PRO Act. So where can our viewers go if they're interested in organizing themselves, if they're interested in joining the DSA and being part of this fight?
They can go to our phone bank page, which is going all through the end of the month. And remember, those phone banks move 2 senators, so we need to do lots more. It's bit.ly/ProAct phone bank. And you can also just search DSA phone bank on Google and find us that way. It's pretty easy to find. We have lots of different avenues through which you can get involved, but the phone banks are super important.
Thank you so much, Sydney Gazarian and Thea Riofrancos. You ladies are wonderful, and thank you again for taking the time to speak to us today about the PRO Act.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Ana Kasparian. I'm in a mood. Look, Casper, I know the post game, it's for the members. They deserve it. We're going to talk about early wakers. Is there someone on the set who might be an early waker and who's guilty? There might be.
I guess.
Which one is it? We're going to find out. Okay, and today I was an early waker, halfway giving away the story. Anyways, and how did I get through the day? Why am I in such a chipper mood? Could it be too much, too strong?
Oh no. It's actually not a good thing when he's had too much, too strong coffee.
Look, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. If you need a picker-upper, that's how it works. It's called coffee. All right, now seriously, we're gonna have a super fun post game for you guys. We're gonna talk about different lifestyles and stuff. And speaking of things for members, though, part of the reason I brought it up is because Old School is switching everything up. Okay, so starting on Monday, Old School is live. Okay, Casper's got me worked up. All right, look at this.
This is a new show. This is what we do.
It's a new show. It's a new show, but here we are having fun. What are you gonna do? Stop us? No. Are people talking about the new Old School on the streets? Yeah, I heard the chitter chatter. It's a 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern live, and that's 45-minute episode. You guys all get to see it. But then for the members, a bonus episode of another 45 minutes. What is this? Okay, just a fun announcement for you guys. But we got a lot of news, and a lot of that is fun too. So let's get started.
Let's get started. Mitch McConnell continues to be someone who Donald Trump is holding a grudge against. In fact, during a recent interview with Maria Bartiromo, Trump brought up the former Senate Majority Leader and just showed the world how salty he continues to be. Let's watch.
Going into the midterm elections, what do you anticipate?
I think we're going to do very well. We need good leadership. Mitch McConnell has not done a great job. I think they should change Mitch McConnell, and we definitely need.
So there's Trump with his raspy voice saying that they need to change Mitch McConnell. And of course, Trump is upset that Mitch McConnell had the audacity to hold him responsible for essentially encouraging the insurrectionists to storm the Capitol on January 6th. Trump will not let that go, which makes this story so much more interesting when you keep in mind that Mitch McConnell was asked about Donald Trump possibly running for president in 2024. And how would Mitch McConnell handle it if Donald Trump actually won the nomination? Well, let's hear how that conversation went down.
So you said that if you got the nomination, you'd stand by him. Do you still say that today?
Well, I'm going to support the nominee of the Republican Party. I do predict, however, there's going to be a robust competition for the nomination. You know, I've got 3 or 4 members of the Senate who are going to be running for president in 2024. Once that all sorts itself out, as the Republican leader of the Senate, obviously I'll be supporting the Republican nominee for president in 2024.
And do you think that person will have to have former President Trump's backing?
You'll have to win the nomination. And I think once the nomination is secured, the party will come together and give it our best shot.
Okay, so this is actually a very serious political story.
Is it?
Is it? Okay, it is. And it has ramifications for Democrats and not just electoral ramifications. I'll get to all that in a second. But first, Trump, I mean, what a goofball. We need to change Mitch McConnell. We need to change him. It's not working. Okay, and
listen, this is what people like about him.
Yeah.
This is what people like about him. And now that he's not the president of the United States, I can comfortably say that his delivery is appealing, entertaining, people love it. Because people love the drama, people love the conflict, and more importantly, as much as I despise Donald Trump, there's something admirable about authenticity, period. And he's certainly authentic. He can't stand Mitch McConnell, and he makes it clear in that interview he doesn't hold back, and that's why people love it. What I find hilarious is that Mitch McConnell has not even realized at this late juncture what happened to the Republican Party. He's still completely in denial about what the Republican base is really about. And you're gonna see more of it as we show you more video of that interaction with Martha McCallum. But what were you gonna say?
Yeah, so look,
first of all, Anna's 100% right about how Trump captured the Republican Party and some independents. So does the whole country love him? No, the majority of the country despises him, as we do, right? But there is a very sizable minority who loves it, and the mainstream media has never understood it. Mitch McConnell's never understood it, and it's actually kind of amazing that they can't understand it. That is how thick the Washington bubble is. The guy sounds authentic. Now that's a super ironic statement, and we should make note of that because he's a legendary con man. So he's one of the least authentic people, literally in the history of America. But he can't. He's not smart enough to be strategic, so he can't hold his tongue. So he just whatever's in his head, he blurts it out. He's like, I mean, sometimes to his detriment, to the point of revealing his own con. Remember with Saudi Arabia, he said, they give me $30 million for apartments. Am I supposed to not like them? Like, man, he just says it. Like, yeah, they give me money, I do whatever they want, right? And so people then mistake that for being honest. And there's a difference between can't hold back and authentic in that populist, non-strategic way, and actually being honest. He's not at all honest about his intentions. So that's an important distinction. But the most important part of this story is the politics of it. I don't mean for who's gonna run in 2024, and I don't wanna get into that nonsense now. I mean, Trump is a blunt instrument, and he says, me no like Mitch. Mitch, please, okay? Or he would never say please, but he would say the other one. Anyway, so he says, me no like him. Me think he's bad. And he called him a dumb son of a bitch, etc. All this stuff. Now imagine Joe Biden calling Chuck Schumer a dumb son of a bitch. That ain't never gonna happen, right? But that is to some degree Biden's detriment. Now I don't want Biden going ballistic like Trump and attacking people for no reason and being irrational and non-strategic, etc. But could Biden use some of the Trump? Well, it's not a strategy because Trump never has strategy, but that kind of line of attack.
Yeah, that tough guy treatment toward members of his own party who refuse to fall in line. I think that Biden does need, and look, Biden could never get away with speaking the way that Donald Trump does. It's just not his brand and it's not gonna work for him. However, I do think that Biden could use his folksy delivery in basically hitting people like Joe Manchin over the head, not literally, figuratively, in order to get him to fall in line on incredibly important policies that we need to get passed, including the PRO Act, including the For the People Act, reforming the filibuster in the very least so we can get these policies through the Senate.
Yeah, so as one of our callers said a long time ago, again proverbially, he said, beat them with a stick and they will do. Okay, and so look at that. Mitch McConnell, Democrats have been saying our whole lives, Mitch McConnell is immovable object. You cannot move Mitch McConnell. Now we're gonna show you a video in a second of Mitch McConnell laying into Donald Trump. And now look at him today. After Trump gives that interview, he goes, yes, sir, absolutely, sir. I will support him if he's the nominee, sir. It turns out Mitch McConnell is movable,
right?
If you try. And what do I always say on the show? If you fight them. It's not to feel good, it's strategic. But no one in Washington understands that except Donald Trump. And so we give credit where credit is due. And look, he moved Mitch McConnell really easily. And how did he do it? By asking pretty please? No, by hitting him over the head politically. And that's just a fact.
There's an important component to this, right? And it's not just, if you just fight, you'll win. There's an important component to it, and it's exactly what Mitch McConnell has in his mind as he's trying to diplomatically answer these questions that Martha McCallum is asking him. So let's go to the second part of what Martha McCallum asked him and what he said to answer. I think this is an incredibly illustrative part of the conversation. Let's watch.
Former President Trump this morning saying that it's time for, he said that you have not done a great job and that it's time for new leadership. What do you say to him today?
Well, look, we're looking to the future, not the past. And if you want to see the future of the Republican Party, watch Tim Scott's response to President Biden last night. He's the future. That's where we're headed. We're not preoccupied with the past, but looking forward.
So you don't think that your party listens to what he says about you or about your leadership?
What we're doing is focusing on the future, not the past. And if you want to see the future, watch Tim Scott's great speech last night. He laid out what the Republican Party today and tomorrow is going to look like.
I want to ask.
All right, Cenk, I'm gonna need you to hold because I have a lot to say. All right, get ready. 3 main points. Let's start off with a quick point about how it's important to compare Donald Trump's authenticity to that ridiculous fake smile that you saw from Mitch McConnell as Martha McCallum was asking the question. I mean, Mitch McConnell represents exactly what not just Republican voters, but what voters in general can't stand. The inauthentic, insincere, nonsense, lie peddling that you see in that video right there. You can tell that Mitch McConnell despises Trump. You can tell that Mitch McConnell does not want to endorse Trump in any way. But the reason why he's not being honest and he's being inauthentic is because he understands that Republican voters right now still find Donald Trump to be incredibly popular. They still approve of the job that he did when he was president. And so McConnell doesn't want to cross them. What he's trying to do there, though, which I think is fascinating, is he's trying to convince Republican voters that like the new hot thing in the Republican Party is Tim Scott. When in reality, if you listen closely to Tim Scott's speech, his response to Biden's speech last night, what you hear is old school Republican messaging, bootstraps. I used to be poor, but I worked real hard and look at me now. That was what his speech was about. His speech was about how you shouldn't rely on the government. The government can't do much for you. And what I think is good news for Democrats, if they actually think about this strategically and listen to their voters, is if Republicans keep going in this direction, they're gonna lose and they're gonna lose big. But Democrats need to do a little more of what Republican politicians do, which is listen to their voters. So for Joe Biden, he knows that his proposals are popular. So why is he caving to the desires of corporate Democrats when he knows that he has the backing of not just Democratic voters, but independent voters as well when it comes to these policy proposals, and in some cases, even the support of Republican voters. So Biden just needs to fight, and he needs to use the support of Democratic voters to basically have corporate Democrats like Sinema, Warner, Manchin fall in line. Yeah. That's what I have to say.
No, 100%. And again, what they don't understand in Washington is that honestly, Biden, McConnell, Tim Scott, all of these guys, Democrat and Republican, they sound like standard politicians. It's just like a certain drone that they have. So in McConnell's case, it was pretty brazen in that interview because he just repeated a talking point. People hate it when you repeat talking points like a standard slimy politician. Oh, we're not looking to the past, we're looking to the future. You just said that in the last answer. That means that's the one thing you have prepared and you're a slime. Look, everybody can tell, except people in Washington. But again, people on TV are like, oh, well, that was savvy talking points. Oh, please. And then, but Biden has a certain cadence. They think it's folksy, and I think that does work with some of the older voters, especially Democratic voters. But overall, but people know he's been in Washington for 50 years. But I don't think Biden has it in him. That's why I think this is his high watermark. I don't think he's able to bully and intimidate his political opponents. And yes, that's the whole point we're trying to tell you guys. It has strategic value. If you do not move Manchin and Sinema, you're not going to pass any of these bills. And the way to move them, Trump proved it without a shadow of a doubt. There was a couple of prominent politicians like Mark Sanford in South Carolina who opposed him. And he eliminated them. He made sure that they lost in a primary. You know what happened after that? Every single Republican politician healed. That's how politics works. And the Democrats either don't get it or don't want to get it.
I do have a possible recommendation for Biden where he doesn't have to, I guess, abandon his folksy nature and still find a way to kind of use his position to bully, for lack of a better word, Joe Manchin to fall in line. So for instance, during his speech, you know what he could have easily done? We need to invest in renewable energy. That's gonna be a big part of our infrastructure plan. And what we're gonna really focus on is bringing those jobs to places like West Virginia. I commit to infusing money into a wind turbine manufacturing plant in West Virginia. Like specifically mention the states where these corporate Democrats are from, and that's how you do it. I mean, when you think about it, the F-35 fighter jets, right? Remember we did a story about how they're faulty, they have all kinds of mechanical issues. They keep manufacturing them, even though the military doesn't really like to use them because of all the problems they have. But the reason why Congress continued to fund that project is because the defense contractors are like, we'll create jobs in your state. We'll manufacture them in your state.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
100%.
we know how corporations do it. We know how private companies do it. They entice through, saying that they're going to do job creation in these states. Why doesn't Biden do that? And last night would have been a perfect opportunity to do it.
So last thing on this, look, unfortunately, I think we're going to talk about this for the next 3.5 years. But there's a great example of LBJ. He pulls a politician in that he needs to vote with him. And he tells him, the guy's excited, he's in the Oval Office, et cetera. He says, oh, great news, we're gonna go in another room and we're gonna do something together. And the guy says, what are we doing together? Oh, we have a press conference planned. And so here's the situation, like let me just use Manchin as an example here in what Anna brought up. If Biden were doing the same thing as LBJ did, he would say, look, we're either gonna go out together in that press conference and we're gonna talk about how we're gonna bring 85,000 new jobs to West Virginia and you get all the credit because you're signing on to the infrastructure bill as I have it, okay? Or we're not gonna go out together, I'm gonna go out by myself and say, for some reason, Joe Manchin has decided to cost West Virginia 85,000 jobs. 85,000 jobs, that's actually 15,000 less than 100,000, but 15,000 more than 70,000 because it's 85,000 until it gets drilled into people's heads that Manchin just screwed him out of 85,000 jobs. So now Trump, because of his nature, would repeat things over and over again. And that was accidentally super helpful to him because it pushes forward the framing that you want. And when you put Manchin in a spot like that, man, that's a tough spot to be in.
He don't like that.
Right, but Biden's never gonna, ever gonna do that. That's why all the wonderful talk he had last night about his agenda, it's very unlikely to happen. That's it.
All right, well, let's actually take a break. And when we come back, we'll discuss how all of a sudden the deficit obsession is a huge part of the Biden administration when he promised that he wouldn't pay so much attention to the deficit. We'll give you the politics of that and more when we return.
All right, back during the break here. Look at Obi Mom Kenobi, of course, jumping in and giving 400 bits for, quote, live old school. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Thank you, Obi Mom. By the way, I don't know if Obi Mom lives in LA, but I saw a license plate today as I was driving that said Obi Mom on it, Obi One Mom or something. So I don't know, but thank you again, Obi Mom. You're awesome. Speaking of people that are awesome, King O Heart 2005 gave 900 bits and gifted 5 subs. Why? Big heart. Big heart. This is not a thing that, okay, I screwed up. Big heart that our audience, especially on Twitch, all across the place. But I like that how Twitch set it up so you can gift the subs and also help us through the bits, etc. By the way, we're thanking Hate Moir for a raid. We have been raided. But if you're unfamiliar with Twitch, that's a good thing. And don't hate more, I don't know. It might be love more, I don't know. But we got rated, but in a positive way. That's what's happening on Twitch. It's my job just to report the news to you guys. Wow, that's awful. That's a handle on Twitch. Has been with us for 3 months with Prime. TYT.com/Prime to find out how you could basically give us free money. We get the money, it doesn't cost you anything if you have Amazon Prime. And they gifted 3 subs, come on, that's not awful. Wow, that's amazing. It's Jess of Stardew has been with us for 3 months. Cyborg Belia just joined up, and Antarim is with us for 2 months again. Oh no, MostTube won on YouTube Super Chat. But she doesn't want to run for office? Okay, Anna. Hashtag Anna for Congress. They said it. Look, I didn't say it, they said it. Am I in favor of it? No, I'm opposed to it. Okay, but things have been said, and there's no, you can't take it back. Okay, so by the way, Senate. Anyways, eventually, not now. Okay.
I'm writing my book. I need her.
New YouTube members, just hit the join button below. Now, look, preemptively, the names I'm about to read, are they American heroes? I guess. Again, people nonstop talking about on the street. I hear about Andy Sobchak. My ears perked up earlier today. They're like, Sobchak. Oh, he's going to be a new Young Turks member on YouTube. Okay, and they say the storm is coming. I didn't know where's the storm. Turns out it's Storm Preslin who just joined by hitting the join button below. Hadi Nomada, Hadi in Turkish means come on. Okay, Hadi Nomada, perfect. And Ellen Rothney, Ellen, are you a hero? Yes, I'm saying it. It's coming out of, the words are coming out of my mouth. Things have been said. Okay, and then John Campbell Reese in our member section writes in the likelihood of the current GOP nominating a man of color as their presidential candidate as I like Joe Biden for giving student debt. We'll see you in a second. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna. During the break, I was reading some member comments, and I had fun with this one, but I want to read it for real now. Oh, no, they took it off.
Gone.
But one of our members, tyt.com/join, that's how you become one of our members that participate in the show, said the chance of the GOP nominating a person of color for their presidential candidate is the same as Joe Biden canceling student debt, which is approximately 0. So,
yeah,
unfortunately, that's true. But anyway, you guys know it. You know it. That's why you're awesome members. All right, what's next, Anna?
All right. Shortly after President Joe Biden was inaugurated, he made it clear that he would not fall for the scaremongering GOP tactics regarding the deficit. And he said that he was going to focus on ensuring that the American people got what they needed economically to do away with inequality and some of the societal and economic ills we're dealing with. But ever since Biden passed the coronavirus relief package, his rhetoric changed considerably when it came to the deficit. And now it looks like he's actually pretty obsessed with the deficit. It was actually front and center during his address before Congress last night.
How do we pay for my jobs and family plan? I made it clear we can do it without increasing the deficits. Let's start with what I will not do. I will not impose any tax increase on people making less than $400,000. But it's time for corporate America and the wealthiest 1% of Americans to just begin to pay their fair share.
Yeah, but the only problem is corporate America, along with GOP lawmakers and corporate Democrats, refuse to raise taxes on the rich. In fact, you can't even get corporate Democrats to agree to increase the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28% when before the Trump administration cut taxes for corporations and the rich, it was 35%. So Biden's own economic advisor even made a point about the deficit recently during Mehdi Hasan's show. Let's watch that.
But what he wanted to make sure to do is he wanted to make sure we were able to pay for it and not put this burden on the American people. As it comes to healthcare, President Biden has said this over and over again. He believes healthcare is a right.
So if you believe that healthcare is a right, why are we having negotiations about whether or not we should treat healthcare as a right and how it should be paid for? I mean, it's fascinating to me, Cenk, because on one hand, you have Biden now saying like, oh, I will show you the pay-fors, right? It's this whole pay-go mentality, pay for. But then you have lawmakers in Congress, including again, corporate Democrats like Manchin, Sinema, Warner, who refuse to raise taxes on the rich. So what does that leave us with?
Yeah, the answer is no legislation. So I don't know if he's trying to kill his own agenda, or he doesn't know what he's doing, or he's trying to thread the needle. He's trying to have it both ways, but he doesn't quite realize that that's not possible. So what do I mean by have it both ways? He wants to get all of his donors money, right? And that's just a fact. So if the mainstream media wants to cry about it and Democratic hacks want to cry about it, that's okay, let him cry. But does Joe Biden care about his political donors? Of course, he's a very standard politician. So the Chamber of Commerce doesn't want most of his agenda passed, like the PRO Act. No way, they're dead set against it. The $15 minimum wage, dead set against it. And look, I saw politics over a decade ago, you're welcome. It's actually very simple. What does the Chamber of Commerce want? Well, they'll get 95% of what they want. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican president or a Democratic president, okay? So in this case, they need a plausible deniability on killing the parts of his agenda that the Chamber of Commerce does not want, okay? So that is why they say, oh, the deficits. All of a sudden the deficits matter. Now, while Trump was in office for 4 years, nobody talked about deficits. $2 trillion tax cut for the rich, $4 trillion COVID relief bill, most of which went to giant corporations under Trump. Nobody talks about the deficit, no deficit talk. You name it, whatever they did, nobody cared about the deficit. And by the way, the media, again, I'm sorry, but it's true. They suck at their job. For 4 years, they don't talk about the deficit. A Democrat gets into office, they're instantly like, oh, deficit. Yep. The collective amnesia is insanity. It's infuriating. But to be fair to the media, Joe Biden helps them. So now he comes in and he's like, now remember everybody, we don't really want to do anything. So deficit, everybody, deficit, right? If you wanted to get it passed, you would say, I mean, look at what his spokesperson said there. She said, we don't want to put that debt on the American people. That's Republican framing.
Yeah, it is.
That's
100%.
No, it creates jobs, which this one actually does. And it actually helps the economy. But instead, you butchered your own framing to hurt your own programs. The only logical explanation is they're doing it on behalf of their donors, and this is some kabuki theater. How could you not know, talking about the deficit and then decoupling the taxes? When you do that, there's no way to pay for any of the programs. Then they turn around and use your own points against you. They said, you said you didn't want to burden the American people, and you said that you were gonna pay for it. And now since we killed your way of paying for it, which is the taxes, well, then you obviously can't do it. And then he's cornered.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I would like to quote the great philosopher Pitbull, who said once, and I think this is important, scared money don't make money. And so in this case, we're not just talking about like, oh, we're gonna spend a bunch of government money and then it's gone. No, it's an investment into the future, which is why like the whole notion of pay-go is so stupid, especially in a context like this, because we are investing that money. The proposed $4 trillion with both the infrastructure bill and the American Families Plan, we're investing that money for the future, right? To, first of all, just update our country when it comes to our infrastructure, but also get it more up to date in order to deal with climate change, which is a huge problem, right? But the way that it's being treated is as if it's like money that's gonna go down the toilet and we're never gonna see it again. No, that's not how this is gonna work out. David Dayen wrote a fantastic piece about this in the American Prospect. I do wanna read you a few excerpts from it because I think that he puts this case out very articulately, possibly more articulate than Pitbull, but I don't know, you judge for yourselves. So he writes, Council of Economic Advisors member Jared Bernstein has consistently made appearances touting how the deficit will not increase. There's just no question that this is a preoccupation of the White House. In fact, if you go back to the campaign, this was the plan, emergency funding to rescue the country and then back to the days of pay-go politics. So he's right about that. I totally noticed that that was happening and he perfectly outlined it. If you can't get consensus on the pay-fors, and if your rhetoric of fiscal responsibility demands that everything be offset, the only result is the narrowing of the tax plan necessarily reduces the spending, right? So if they're not gonna increase the taxes necessary to pay for the bill, then that means they're gonna strip the bill of the provisions that we desperately need. That's just the only way that this could possibly work. And then he writes this is the important part. If there's any type of spending that doesn't require pay for it, as they are investments that pay off in the future, it's infrastructure spending, be it physical or human infrastructure. The fact sheet on the American Families Plan cited a paper showing that every dollar invested in early childhood education yields $7.30 in benefits. So why are you paying for it then? Why do you have to front the money ahead of time like that?
Or say that we must balance it, our budget this year. So let me explain. From a business context, sometimes you need to do an investment up front. As he's alluding to there, the studies have already shown you put a dollar in, you're gonna get $7.30 back, right? But if you need to balance the budget every year, you might not be able to put that dollar in. And that would actually be counterproductive because it prevents the $7 from coming in. Businesses know this, that's why they do investments all the time. By the way, personal families, you also know this. Did you pay for your house all at once? No, almost no one did, right? You put a down payment and then you get a mortgage. What's a mortgage? It's debt. It's an investment in that home. And so why do you, if you had to balance your budget every year, you could never buy a home. You'd have to pay for the whole thing.
Yeah.
So this is a very logical investment, but Biden, in essence, politically punched himself in the face by saying, you know what, but we got to balance the budget, deficits are terrible. And we already know, as Anna said in the beginning, the corporate tax cut was from 35 to 21, and now he's only talking about bringing it back up to 25. That's never gonna pay for it. So then it's over. His entire, all that wonderful stuff you heard last night, and it was a great speech. It's just not realistic based on what Biden is doing. And no one else in media has the courage to actually tell you that. Or maybe they just don't understand politics and they don't know what's gonna happen next. If you need to balance the budget to do this stuff, no president could do it. Then you could never make an investment in the country in like infrastructure. Eisenhower couldn't have built the highways and the bridges in the first place if we had that rule. So at a minimum, everybody in media should be asking, why is Biden trying to hurt his own agenda?
Well, let's move on to the coronavirus vaccine, because as you guys know, we've been talking about this quite a bit. There have been calls to lift the vaccine copyright so poorer countries can manufacture generic versions. But there are various industries that are standing in the way of letting that happen. So I want to share those details. Recently released disclosures show that Hollywood and major publishing companies, along with the music industry, are standing in the way of lifting the patent or the copyright for the coronavirus vaccines. In fact, they have sent letters to the White House urging them to avoid doing so. Why? Why would Hollywood be so concerned about lifting the patent for a coronavirus vaccine or the coronavirus vaccines when poor countries desperately need to be able to manufacture their own? Well, it turns out that they're concerned that this could be a slippery slope that could lead to piracy, hurting their profits. So as Lee Fong over at The Intercept writes, the Motion Picture Association, which represents major movie and television studios, deployed 5 lobbyists to influence Congress and the White House over the waiver. The Association of American Publishers, as well as Universal Music, have similarly revealed that they are actively lobbying against it. So the industry sources say that the lobbyists are actually concerned that the waiver will be too broad in scope and could open the door for increased piracy. But the copyright industry push relates to a provision of the proposal that would waive copyright enforcement for the prevention, containment, and treatment of COVID-19. This doesn't apply to the Hollywood industry at all. Not in any way, shape, or form. They claim that the wording in the request indicates that it could affect them, but that's not true. So, for instance, A spokesperson for the Recording Industry Association of America told The Intercept, as originally drafted, the proposal waiver would have extended to wholly unrelated areas that have nothing to do with the global fight against COVID, like copyright in creative works. But when they were asked for the language that they're speaking of, they didn't respond. They didn't provide any evidence for what they're claiming there. And the draft text for the waiver notes that the waiver in paragraph 1 shall not apply to the protection of performers, producers and phonograms, meaning sound recordings, and broadcasting organizations under Article 14 of the TRIPS agreement. So what's the problem?
Yeah.
What's the problem?
Well, so I'll tell you why they're doing this and how it's inevitable, but we have to be super cognizant of it, but we're not. Okay, so why are they doing this? Because there's certain employees within that lobby that know that if you loosen copyright restrictions, it might eventually affect them. Okay, even if it doesn't affect them in this case, they're worried about precedent. Now, is that a high probability? No, it's not a high probability. But if you're a lobbyist for this industry, you don't care about high probability or not. You're gonna fight any attempt to expand waivers on copyrights, okay? That is core to their business model. So us wishing that they wouldn't do it or hoping they wouldn't do it is naive. They're definitely going to do it. And us thinking, well, that seems really inhumane. I mean, you're worried about this tiny chance that it's gonna affect you down the road. Meanwhile, people are dying in India, and you say, don't do a waiver on a drug that I got nothing to do with, because one day you might do a waiver on movies down the road. God, that's so callous. Yeah, that's called capitalism.
Yes, exactly. Okay. When profits go over the lives of people.
But in our system, look, you don't have to design capitalism that way, but we did. In our system in America, we told corporations, public corporations, you must maximize profit. If you don't maximize profit, you will be fired, okay? That's just a stone cold fact. So they're not gonna care about the people of India. They're just never going to care. That's not how it works, so stop being naive. Now, does that mean, okay, well, that's it, we give up and say, no, if you're aware of that phenomenon at least, then your politicians, if they actually were functioning in a democracy, would then fight on your behalf. Democracy would check capitalism and say, okay, I hear why you're doing that, movie companies, but our answer is no, not close. But we don't do that here in America, why? Because we legalize bribery. So those guys give tons of money to politicians. So now when they give millions of dollars to politicians, what do you think politicians are gonna do? How much did the people of India, the people dying in Calcutta and Mumbai, give to senators here in America? Zero. And theoretically, the government of India cannot give money to our politicians, but corporations can, movie companies can, drug companies can, they're number one in giving. So when all of these companies unite and they bribe all of our politicians, then our entire laws are skewed, and then we become inhumane. America then, through our politicians, says, no, we don't want to help dying people all across the world. Why? Because Warner Brothers and Pfizer, or name any movie companies or drug companies, paid me off. And they say that it might affect their profits by a couple of dollars. So that's it. All the people that are suffering in Brazil, Russia, Corona in India, you name it, go die. Because America set up the wrong system.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting because I used to think the same way, that capitalism can be reformed. I mean, the United States managed to do that in the New Deal era, right? I mean, that's what Roosevelt managed to do, but what happened after that? Business interests will always find a way to beat back any type of regulation or any type of check on their power or profit-making abilities, which is why this problem could have easily been solved by decommodifying the healthcare industry, like pharmaceutical drugs, right? Get like the industries that we rely on to live, right? Whether it's housing or the healthcare companies and all of that. there should be no profit motive. Prisons, no profit motive. Once you introduce a profit motive to those industries and you commodify it, well then yeah, you're gonna get screwed. And regardless of how many regulations you pass, I mean, there are cases where corporations just literally don't follow regulations and they get away with it. It's called Wall Street.
Yeah, well, it's actually called almost all the industries because, again, the bribery, et cetera. So look, I don't want to get into a long debate about capitalism. I'm not convinced that there is really a functioning second model, but the definition of capitalism is much broader than people realize. Everybody thinks, oh, it has to be the American version, the extreme version where there are no rules and corporations completely own the government and they could do any cruelty that they want. So Anna's right, things that affect our lives like cops, fire departments, and yes, health insurance must be public. And you could do that in a capitalist system, all of Europe does, okay? But I don't think the drug companies should be. But so how would you solve this problem if we didn't have legalized bribery in this country? It's actually very simple. When we gave $18 billion in subsidies to the drug companies to develop those vaccines, we attach a condition like any investor would. You say, hey, if I'm giving you $18 billion, here's what I want back. And one of the things you would have said, because it's the most obvious thing to think through, is what is it gonna cost the American people? And then once we're done with the American people, if you're just looking at it from a selfish American perspective, how are we gonna make generic drugs from these vaccines and how much is it gonna cost the rest of the world? You would have thought that through, you would have negotiated ahead of time, and then we wouldn't get into this mess now where we go, oh golly gee, nobody could have thought that one day we might wanna use the vaccine in India. Of course we were gonna use it in India, of course we were. Why did they not pre-negotiate that as the government? Because they're bought by the drug companies. This is not, we couldn't see it coming that the rest of the world would want a vaccine. They purposely didn't negotiate it so they can now turn around and say, well, there was nothing we could do. They had to charge super high rates or let people die. There was nothing we could do. No, it's a lie, it's a scam. They knew there was something they could do and they chose not to do it because they're bought and paid for by largely the drug companies in this case, but even things like the movie companies.
Well, let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about how no one ever really talks about the fact that quick trials don't happen in America as often as we would like. So when it comes to injustice, we need to have that discussion, and we'll have it when we come back from the break.
I can't get enough of Twitch, so I'm going back there. Percy gifted 5 subs, so did Rhetoriku. No, the Rhetoriku gifted a sub, but we love you either way. Hate Me Or gifted 5 subs. Wasabi Dragon, how fun is that? I'm already addicted to you. Gifted 5 subs. True Seattleite, who's been with us for 4 months, said, is Cenk worth the subscription? I guess. Thank you for guessing in that direction, I appreciate it. Love you guys. Idra Gustin, also with us for 5 months, says 5 months and freebasing the knowledge by now. TYT gateway to fact-based news. There you go, love it. And by the way, speaking of freebasing, we're gonna tell you about a CEO that got relieved of duty for doing LSD at work.
Let him go.
Right or wrong, we'll have a conversation about it later.
Let him go.
Okay, apparently that's the way she's gonna go. Maybe we should do a poll on it. Anyway, Delta Quadrant Dragon. Oh, we forgot to talk about the poll, Mitch McConnell or Donald Trump.
I know.
Okay, tyt.com/polls. Who's worse, Mitch McConnell or Donald Trump? Enjoy that one. I don't know the answer. I'm looking forward to your answer. All right, Delta Quadrant Dragon says, does TYT like Bezos bucks? I guess. Come on, you guys are the best. All right. Stephen Matthias says, as a musician, I can say that record companies use copyright to abuse artists. And Stephen, thank you for using YouTube Super Chat. YT Prenude says, send the tech anyway and tell Big Pharma to F off. Well, that's what we would do if we had democratic capitalism. What's democratic capitalism, you ask, Cenk? Don't worry, I explain it in Justice is Coming. So you'd want to go to justicescomingbook.com to pre-order justicescomingbook.com. Let's hope it actually is. All right, I love this one. Gina Gallegos also wrote in on YouTube Super Chat. My mom told her coworker she was fully vaccinated. Her coworker said, OMG, you're gonna die in 3 years. My mom said, that's okay, just cremate me when it happens. LOL. I love your mom's attitude because, yeah, that's where I am now. When people are like, oh yeah, I think you're doing this because of this, or I think you're that. I go, okay, that's like your opinion, man. I don't care at all. That's good, bless your heart, okay? Drives people crazy, but I really mean it. I think that makes them more crazy. Anyways, the Screamo Dragon in our member section said, Cenk, give me a dad joke. I need some new material for the kids. They're stuck at home with strep. You know, I read that comment like 30 minutes ago. It's been stressing me out ever since. These dad jokes, I don't have them prearranged. I don't have them scripted. They got to come out naturally. So stay with me. We'll figure one out. Back on TYT, Justice Dragon and Salt Dragon. Let's proceed.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about our justice system, which we know is broken, but there's one issue that doesn't get enough attention. The justice system in the United States is supposed to grant those who have been accused of a crime a fair and speedy trial. However, more often than not, that doesn't actually happen. And during the pandemic, there have been cases of people who have spent over a year in prison waiting for a court date. The Nation wrote a fantastic piece about this, and it talks about a specific jail where people have been incarcerated for a long time, haven't had their day in court, and have been protesting, engaging in uprisings to try to get the public's attention so they can get justice. On Easter Sunday, for instance, about 60 people incarcerated at the St. Louis City Justice Center jail in downtown St. Louis escaped from their cells and joined together in an uprising to demand their day in court and improved conditions inside the jail amidst the deadly pandemic. It was the second major uprising in the CJC since February, and at least the fourth coordinated protest there in the last 5 months. And you can understand why they're doing this. The Easter Rebellion began around 8:30 p.m. when protesters smashed the third floor window of the jail and dropped a sign painted in white toothpaste that read, "Help us." A few months earlier on December 29th and January 1st, groups of detainees refused to return to their cells, protesting a near complete lack of COVID-19 protections. And I want to show you all what these protests look like.
Chaos inside this St. Louis jail. Inmates objects ablaze and throwing items outside shattered windows.
This is at St. Louis City Justice Center, downtown on Tucker.
Officials say it all started with a fight overnight. Inmates able to break out of their cells after jimmying the locks.
That detainee got into a scuffle with our correction officer, who was then jumped by others that were detained inside one of our units on the 4th floor.
They done set their sheets on fire.
The smoke-scarred windows full of inmates, some holding signs, others raising their fists as daylight broke. Activists say this comes after an ongoing protest against conditions at the jail.
So not only are they concerned about the conditions in the jail, which by the way includes overcrowding during a pandemic, they're also concerned that while they may have been charged with a crime, they haven't had a single day in court. And so if you can't afford the cash bail, you're stuck and you don't get your day in court in order to defend yourself. It's insane. In fact, St. Louis City has gone a little over 1 year without a single jury trial. Single jury trial.
It's unbelievable. All right, guys, the great injustice of this is easy to understand. So they're asking for cash bail for minor offenses. And then they're saying, because of COVID, we're not doing jury trials. So you just have to sit in jail, right? So on average, people are waiting 5 months for a probable cause hearing. That's the first time they go in front of a judge and see if there's even any cause to hold them at all. And by the way, as it turns out, most of them are then dismissed. A lot of them were picked up without a warrant, and there's no evidence against them. There's no paper trail, there's no nothing, so they get released. So what the hell did you keep them in jail for 5 months for if they didn't do it, or if you don't have any evidence on them? And the answer is, well, they needed the bail money. Guilty or innocent, it doesn't matter. We're not going to let you out without bail. Now, think about it. If you're wealthier, you have the money.
You're out.
And it doesn't matter, again, if you're guilty or innocent, it doesn't matter if you cut 3 people's heads off. You give the bail money and you are released. Now, they could deny you bail if you cut 3 people's heads off. But overall, rich people can leave jail instantly. Most of the middle class can leave. Only the poor remain. And their crime is not what they were charged with. Their crime is being poor, because if you're charged for the same exact thing, but you have money, you're free to go, and then you show up for your probable cause hearing in 5 months. These people's freedoms are taken away, and a great majority of them are then released later because it turns out we had no evidence on them.
I mean, imagine spending, look, there's one activist who says, I know some people that have been waiting there for 6 years. That's 6 years without ever walking outside. That's insane. And look, what I actually want to bring up is something that I think impacts our police departments, and now, I mean, clearly it's impacting our justice system. What we do in foreign policy comes back to bite us, and that's exactly what's happening here. When you have this like flippant attitude toward prisoners at Guantanamo Bay, who very often haven't been charged with anything. They've just been imprisoned with, in some cases, no evidence. They haven't been charged. They're just held indefinitely in Guantanamo Bay. And when we as Americans tell the US government that we don't really care, and we just kind of let that go, well, then that emboldens them to do the same thing to us.
Yeah, and they are doing it now to us. And so that's why we were against it in the first place. It doesn't mean you let everybody in Guantanamo Bay go. If it turns out that you have evidence, and some of them we do have evidence, and they have been convicted, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was one of the masterminds of 9/11. Great, we got him. We should put him in a maximum security prison in Colorado. Make sure he never sees the light of day. But a lot of those guys were just picked up on bounties, and we've been keeping him for decades and going, we don't care. We're never going to give him a trial. That's not America. And now, I mean, look, I know this is a phenomenon that existed before Guantanamo Bay, but now it's, the cash bail is absolutely out of control, and it's used to subjugate, oppress, and take the freedom away from people who don't have enough money. And it's sickening, and it's not justice for all, that's for sure. Look, guys, there's been 119 acts of collective resistance in just the first 90 days after COVID began, okay? Why? They're packing everybody into these tight places. People have COVID-like symptoms. They can't tell because nobody gets tested. And then as the sickness starts to spread like wildfire in the prisons, you don't bust out and start a fire and do the toothpaste thing and the signs and all that stuff. You know what's gonna happen. You know they're gonna come in eventually with tear gas, kick the living crap out of you, and then move you to the place in St. Louis called the workhouse, which is a notorious jail where you're gonna be stuffed in worse conditions. You don't do that unless you're desperate, right? So the people running this facility came out after this event and said, we have no idea why they're doing it. They have no reason to do it at all. I guess they're vicious criminals. Oh, shut up, shut up. I'm paraphrasing on the vicious criminals, but they said, we have no idea why they're doing it.
No.
Well, come on.
That's
ridiculous.
Being accused of a crime. The Constitution states that you have the right to a speedy trial. You've been there for over a year. You haven't had the first day in court. Imagine that, and especially like if you know you're innocent, you don't even get an opportunity to defend yourself. That's insane. So obviously I can understand why inmates would want to protest that. But as you mentioned, they are treated even worse once they do say something, once they do engage in these protests, and they're sent over to this medium security place called the Workhouse. And that place is notorious for mistreatment of prisoners. For instance, correctional officers will randomly and indiscriminately use pepper spray on inmates, water being turned off as punishment. There have been reports of intentionally placing inmates in cells where other inmates are clearly showing signs and symptoms of coronavirus. And there's also, of course, overcrowding, which is disastrous during a pandemic.
Yeah, so I would say the last two things here. Look, ending cash bail is a no-brainer, except of course our politicians don't have a brain or they get bribed by private prisons, etc. Why it's a no-brainer? You should do it based on the level of danger of the inmate, potential danger of the inmate. And you should have a fair standard that applies to everyone. So you can keep people in jail if you have good reason to believe they're really dangerous and we shouldn't let them out. But if you do it based on wealth, that makes no sense at all. Why are we doing it based on wealth? It's inequality built into the justice system. But the second point is also important. Guys, we were trained since we were kids, I know I was, by the American media to think that the system is binary. You're either a good guy or a bad guy. You're either good or evil. And we were taught that all the prisoners are evil. Oh, they're bad guys and they're terrible and they're incorrigible. And if I saw that as a kid, I'd say, oh, look at them. You see that? And mind you, I was a Republican when I was a kid, etc. Oh, they're starting a fire. That somebody could have gotten hurt. We knew it. It confirms they're bad guys. That's what the media told us our whole lives. And guess what? It's a lie. Remember, most of the people there, when they finally get their hearing, are released. We didn't have evidence on them. And a lot of people are in jail for smoking a joint all across the country. Are they like evil? No, the government and the media lied to you your whole life. It's way more complicated than that. There are some people who do terrible things and we do need to lock them up. And then we have basically a prison industrial complex here that has robbed millions of Americans of their freedom. And the media, instead of having the courage to fight back against that, enabled that system.
Well, let's move on to this next story. Luckily, there was some justice in this story, and that came in the form of an FBI investigation. We'll talk about Giuliani later, but this is different. An FBI investigation found that an ex-Georgia cop had bragged in text messages about basically beating black people in the community and also specifically charging them in such a way that it would make it difficult for them to vote. So he got caught, luckily, because the FBI was investigating this. They were investigating his texts, and initially this was an investigation into illegal weapons. During these text exchanges, which were with other extremists, by the way, Cody Richard Griggers of Montrose was fired last November after the FBI contacted the sheriff there about the investigation into illegal guns and their alleged ties to a California man said to have made violent political statements on Facebook. Now, Griggers, that's the cop here, in text was said to have claimed that he was making and gathering illegal firearms and explosives. So naturally, the FBI is like, we better look into that, and they did. FBI searched Griggers' patrol car and found a machine gun with an obliterated serial number, a weapon he was not allowed to have in his patrol car. An unregistered short barrel shotgun was found in his home, the statement went on. In all, between the defendant's residence and duty vehicle, officers found 11 illegal firearms. So he has already pleaded guilty to that, and he's facing a maximum of 10 years in prison as a result. Luckily, he's an ex-cop. He's not a deputy or anything anymore. But the second part of this is how he was communicating to other extremists about the way he feels about black people in the community. So he, of course, texted all sorts of racist and bigoted things. He expressed viewpoints consistent with racially motivated violent extremism, including the use of racial slurs against homosexuals, gay people, and making frequent positive references to the Nazi Holocaust, prosecutors said in a statement announcing Grigors' plea. I'm gonna give you an example of something that he had written. I beat the expletive out of racial slur Saturday. Expletive tried to steal a gun magazine from the local gun store. Sheriff's department said it looked like he fell, meaning he beat him up so much that he looked like he fell and suffered a serious injury. The affidavit noted, quoting Grigors. Grigors went on to write that the beating was for him sweet stress relief. And he also bragged about how he was intending to charge the guy and ensure that he would be unable to vote in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those last two things are so important. One is, I mean, look at this. We have deeply racist cops. Not all of them in this. Like, look, I think their training is horrific throughout the country, and it teaches a culture of extreme violence towards the citizens. So that does apply, unfortunately, to everyone. Some people can resist it, but it's a few good apples, okay? But when it comes to racism, not all the cops are this over-the-top white supremacist racist, but there are a lot. Now, I want you to think about a couple of things about that. Okay, if you're not black, it doesn't affect you at all. So presumably, if you're white, right? And so you never notice it. But think about if you were black. There are a certain percentage of cops out there who have a gun and a badge and pretty much a near, untouchable status. And some of them are vicious racists. And they can't wait to beat the living crap out of you to just get what he said was, quote, sweet stress relief. How does that make you feel? And that guy, is he gonna be hesitant to use his gun against an unarmed black man? And so, I mean, think about the terror of walking around knowing you don't know which one, but a certain percentage of cops can't wait to attack you for just who you are, just for being black. He doesn't know a thing about you, but he wants to attack you. Now, that's not every cop, but just the fact that it's a lot of cops, it's so unbelievably disconcerting. And the fact that other people can't have empathy for that is just borderline shocking.
I also find the hiring process for local police departments shocking. I know that there's no uniform policy, and I'm sure it differs from one department to the next. But just experiencing what it was like to witness my husband go through the very extensive background check process to become a firefighter, which he didn't end up doing, but we went through the process. It is incredibly invasive. I mean, we're talking about being a firefighter. They show up to the building you live in, they knock on every neighbor's door, they interview every neighbor. They called me and asked me if I've ever dealt with any domestic abuse. I mean, it's just very thorough. It's just like a robust investigation into the person applying. And I just get the sense that with some police departments, that type of background check isn't taking place. Like, this guy is not only an extreme racist, but he had 11 illegal weapons. I mean, how did this guy get hired? That's what I want to know.
And how does he stay on the job until they discover this stuff? Does no one heard him saying outrageous racist things, right, which he says apparently on a regular basis? No one at the department heard him? No, thin blue line. You know what happened. People heard it and they covered up for it. And they thought, who cares if he beats up black people or maybe even kills them at some point? What's more important is solidarity for our gang. Keep it real. If you don't think there's a thin blue line, you're nuts. Of course there is. They brag about it, right? So what does a thin blue line mean? That means we protect criminals in our midst. It's like literally what it means. And I don't want you to gloss over that sweet stress relief thing. Again, it's not every cop, but are there some decent percentage of cops who beat up people because they think it's cathartic and they get off on it, and they're frustrated about their lives and they think, I could beat up people with impunity? and they do it basically for fun. If you think that doesn't exist, you're incredibly naive. So now, because we know that's part of human nature, we should guard against that. We should have a lot of precautions to make sure that police do not abuse their authority like that. Instead, we encourage them to do it. Oh, if anybody disrespects your order for even a split second, make sure that you viciously attack them to show who's boss. And that's why we see the videos of a 73-year-old woman getting mangled.
Right.
You saw the elderly gentleman in Buffalo get his skull cracked, because if anybody crosses you for a second, you get to have sweet stress relief. And it is encouraged by police departments all across the country. Keep it real, that's just the reality of our lives.
That does it for hour one. When we come back for the second hour of the show, we're gonna lighten things up a little bit, all right? We're gonna dunk on Rudy Giuliani, because how could we not? So stick around for that, and Giuliani's son when we come back.
Uh-oh. Democrats, they've been so weak for so long. For God's sake, fight for your side. I would not like to compromise with Republicans. I would like to defeat them. Lynn, do you support Donald Trump?
Yes, I like Donald Trump.
Well, that's why we think you're racist. The 5 black kids in Central Park did not commit the rape. He said, who cares? Keep them in prison anyway. They probably did something. He's a terrible guy. Very fine people on the side chanting, Jews will not replace us.
The most important part is we've got to fix it. And fixing it means you have to acknowledge the problem. They don't value black lives. They don't value poor lives. And anyone who's against Black Lives Matter is a racist piece of crap, including Donald Trump and nearly every Republican politician in this country. You're a full-blown racist if you still don't believe it, and you still don't want any reform, and you still don't want any justice.
New day in America. Progressives, we actually fight back.
Hi, I'm John, and I'm new to TikTok, but about 3 years ago, I started my daily political news show, The Damage Report, because I noticed this trend where every morning I was waking up to this tsunami of news that was just generally dreadful and horrifying and shocking, and I thought that if I could spend my time helping people to navigate this, serving as a bit of a life raft, pointing out which news is important and why, there are worse ways to spend your day. We're not an average news show, and we don't want our TikTok presence to be average either, so feel free to let us know what you'd like us to do on the platform, and maybe give us a follow at The Damage Report.
All right, Amazon Prime members, here's how you can subscribe for free on Twitch. Start by linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, and then click that little subscribe or resubscribe button below the stream on Twitch. Scroll down and select the subscribe free with Prime button, and then you're finished. Close out immediately and share your little subscription alert with the chat. Send a cute message along with it, and bathe in the sweet, twitchy, Bezos-funded love. Hashtag Bezos Bucks.
Hey everyone, Matteo Scarapore here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, who's real suave and good looking, comes in and asks Darren to give him his regular. But for some reason, Darren says no. This man named Rhett Daniels, who's the CEO of a startup called Someone, located on the 36th floor of the same building, is impressed. And he invites Darren upstairs, and then he extends an offer to join his elite sales team. Darren reluctantly joins, and he soon realizes that he's not the only black salesperson there. He's the only black person in the entire company. So he goes through hell and back in order to make it to the top. And once there, he has status, money, power, but he says, you know what? I don't like being the token black guy. So he hatches a plan to help other people of color infiltrate America's tech startup sales teams, redefining what it means to be a minority in the workplace. This book, definitely, if you couldn't tell, touches on many things that are relevant to this moment that we're all living in right now. But it's also connected to the many moments in history that have come before today. I hope that you read it. I hope that you enjoy it. And if you want to order a copy, go to shoptyt.com. Thank you, be well, and happy 2021.
Are we back on the Young Turks? I guess. Okay, Cenk and Anna with you guys. And another Anna Mesholzadeh just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube channel member and a bit of a hero, okay? Anna, thank you, we love doing the show with you guys. And I'm just gonna do one YouTube super chat here because it's fun. We'll see if Anna thinks it's fun. Jeremy Skibbo says, hey Anna and Cenk, I've been watching past videos and came across the bet you two made on who'd win in a race. Any chance of a rematch?
Okay,
you can make it a charity fundraiser your viewers donate to.
No chance, 0% chance. I'm not doing that ever again. What you guys don't get about Cenk is that if Cenk thinks that, if beating me in the race means that he's going to suffer a stroke once he finishes, he'll still do it. He won't, the willpower is unmatched. I don't have that willpower, I don't.
Well, I don't know, I agree to disagree on that, but I will have a stroke, I will, okay? All right, let's do the news.
That's why you wanted to read that comment, okay, I see you.
Of course.
All right, okay, I see you, Mr., I forget his name.
Jeremy,
I see you, Jeremy. All right, let's talk about Rudy. Jesus. Federal investigators searched the home and the office of former Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani. And what they're investigating is the work that he did for officials in Ukraine. There's some suspicion that he failed to register as someone who's working for foreign agents. And when you're doing that kind of lobbying, you need to let the federal government know. Now, we don't have too many details, other details about what this investigation includes, but what we do know is that Giuliani is not happy about this, and Donald Trump is not happy about this. In fact, he defended Rudy Giuliani in a recent interview. Let's take a listen.
What do you want to say about this? Your reaction to this DOJ executing a search warrant of Rudy Giuliani's apartment?
Well, it is incredible because you bring up John Kerry and the horrible thing that he did and was doing for a period of time. And then you take the greatest mayor in the history of New York, you take a great patriot. You know, Rudy Giuliani is a great patriot. He does these things, he just loves this country. And they raid his apartment. It's like so unfair and such a it's like a double standard like I don't think anybody's ever seen before. It's very, very unfair. Rudy is a patriot who loves this country. And I don't know what they're looking for, what they're doing with filings of various papers, lobbying filings. Well, did Hunter file and did Biden file? Because they did a lot of work with other countries. To the best of everybody's knowledge, they didn't file. Rudy loves this country so much. It is so terrible when you see things that are going on in our country with the corruption and the problems, and then they go after Rudy Giuliani. It's very sad, actually.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's right. I mean, that is what patriotic people do. They lobby on behalf of foreign governments. That's what patriotism is. Cenk.
Yeah, if he was acting as a foreign agent and then didn't disclose that, that would seem like it would be the opposite of being patriotic, the very opposite of it. Okay, so now look at Trump. So every once in a while now, Republicans do this thing that it's just both amuses and infuriates me. Where they're like, the Democrats are not being nice enough to Donald Trump. They're not giving him enough credit. They did it again on last night's Biden speech. They should have thanked Trump for Operation Warp Speed. It's such a shame how disrespectful they are. Meanwhile, Trump comes out and he's like, John Kerry, what he did was horrible.
What did John Kerry do again?
Nothing. There's a made up story about how he gave away Israeli secrets to the Iranians. That is very unlikely, to say the least. And John Kerry, of course, denies it.
That John Kerry gave Israeli secrets away?
There is no chance of that, okay? John Kerry, if you said he gave away Iranian secrets to the Israelis,
then I'd
believe that in a
100%. He would do it out in the open. He'd just do it on national
television.
television.
And everybody would applaud him for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, but he's a horrible person. Oh, well, what he did, horrible, right? And then did Biden file? File for what? You know, they worked for a lot of foreign governments. No, he didn't. I mean, Hunter Biden was on a board of a company in a different country. Whatever he had to file, I don't know and I don't care, because he never affected policy in any way, shape, or form. By the way, if you have proof of that, then great, then let's put him away. What do I care? I don't care about Hunter Biden. He ain't my uncle, right?
Yep.
So, but Joe Biden, he definitely did not work for a foreign government, but Trump doesn't care at all. He's willing to defame and smear someone at the drop of a hat without a second thought. Biden didn't file, and then this poor Rudy Giuliani trying to make all this money off of another country like I would want to do and have done many times. And now we're going to apply the rule to Republicans and to white men? That doesn't seem fair. Poor Rudy.
Donald Trump doesn't like it when anyone steals his clout or gets more attention than him. So I am curious how he feels about the fact that Rudy Giuliani's son, Andrew, has gotten far more attention for his response of this raid than Donald Trump has. In fact, this video went viral on social media and it features Andrew Giuliani, Giuliani's son, defending his father.
Mind you, I'm speaking as a son and a concerned American. Anybody, any American, whether you're red or blue, should be extremely disturbed by what happened here today, by the continued politicization of the Justice Department. This is disgusting. This is absolutely absurd, and it's the continued politicization of the Justice Department that we have seen. The only piece of evidence that they did not take up there today was the only piece of incriminating evidence that is in there, and it does not belong to my father. It belongs to the current president's son.
Okay.
Okay, can I just say, so a lot of people are watching that without the sound. First of all, God bless. That makes a lot of sense, okay? And then they're saying, my God, he looks so much like Will Ferrell, right? Will Ferrell during campaign. I actually think when you listen with the sound, he looks like he looks like a combination of Trump and Will Ferrell doing a Bush impersonation.
Totally.
Okay, let me tell you something, okay? I've been misunderestimated, okay? My father's tremendous. It's some combination thereof. But they're all comic actors, right? I mean, as I look at that, I'm like, does he really believe any of this? And it looks so scripted. And for him, and you guys, you can hate on me if you want, but as I saw him screaming there, it was like the empty eyes. I thought, low IQ.
Oh my gosh.
He just looks super low IQ. He has let me tell you something, this is an injustice. I think I'm supposed to look like this. I think I'm supposed to be angry like Trump.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to wave my hands like a politician, like I saw in the movie Campaign. That was an amazing campaign. I don't know who was gonna win, Will Ferrell or Zach Galifianakis. Nobody knew. Nobody knew.
Yeah. I gotta say, I have nothing interesting to add to this.
I like that frank admission.
At all. I mean, like, it's a circus. Like, we're watching clowns juggle right now. That's all it is. I don't know what else to add to it.
No, I'll add this one last thing. So look, unfortunately, now that a lot of the media is split up into camps, and so, and you might think, oh, that's funny. You guys are in a camp. You're clearly progressive. We are, and we're very honest about it. But we're not in a partisan camp. So if they got Hunter Biden doing something illegal, we don't mind accountability on that at all.
No, Cenk, I really care. I'm up all night trying to defend Hunter Biden because we got to protect him, okay? Yeah, I know. Like,
but the thing is,
that's the thing that doesn't, like, it amazes me. Like, Trump went on television to defend Rudy Giuliani, which is actually kind of shocking because Trump doesn't really do anything for anyone. So I do find it kind of interesting that he felt the need to do that. Maybe because Trump is, implicated in all of that as a result of the first impeachment that he went through, when he was using, congressionally appropriated military funds for Ukraine. He was withholding it to do this quid pro quo with the leader of Ukraine. He wanted him to announce that sham investigation into the Bidens, which he didn't end up doing, and that's what he was impeached for. And Giuliani's in the mix with all of that stuff. So I get why Trump would maybe have an interest in getting out in front of it and maybe defending Giuliani. But just everyone shut up. Like everyone go away. Like I just go. You know, like it's, they should, I think they enjoy the attention. They love it. And now, I didn't even know that Rudy Giuliani had a son. And now we have to deal with him. We got to deal with Eric Trump, Trump Jr. Like there's all these like weird rich kids running around, like sucking up all the attention in the air. That's the only thing that like I have to say about this. It's super annoying.
So look, Andrew Giuliani, I remember when he was a pudgy little kid and a brat. And there's nothing wrong with being a pudgy kid.
We got a picture of that.
I should know, I was one.
There he is.
And he is, there he is in the corner. He still looks the same, okay? And he was a little brat and Rudy couldn't get him under control in the press conference. And that became a big news story and stuff. But now, like I get a sense from the Andrew Giulianis of the world, they're thrilled when their dad gets into trouble because that allows them to have a press conference.
They love it.
So they're like, attention, yes. Don Jr., Eric, all the same, right? So, but yes, the reason Trump's protecting Rudy is, of course, Rudy's got the goods on him. Michael Cohen, who knows Rudy and Trump obviously really well, former attorney for Donald Trump who turned on him, said, Rudy would turn on Donald in a second if he thought it was to his benefit. So that's why Trump's out there on TV like, wait, not Rudy, right? And so who would even defend Hunter Biden? Well, there is an answer to that. It's MSNBC. They would defend almost any Democrat. And so they don't care right or wrong. If Biden did something illegal, Joe Biden, we would say it's illegal. We would say it's wrong, right? But MSNBC would go and kick into high gear and protect him till the cows come home, right? So that's why the right wing is not completely wrong to say there is a protection racket for Democrats, but there's also a protection racket for Republicans. The only people that are not being protected is us. The American people, well, progressives, that's true too. But I mean, no, the American people. Like if you're a regular person, you're gonna have to follow the law and you're gonna have the book thrown at you and you might even sit in jail for 5 months as we told you about in an earlier story, even if you didn't do it because you don't have enough money for bail, right? But if you're a really rich Democrat or Republican, you're largely above the law. That's why they like this theatrics. They're enjoying it.
Rich person, period. Remember, we did that story about Jake Paul, caught with all of these illegal weapons in his giant Calabasas mansion. He's not in prison. We just did a story today about a really bad cop who also got caught with illegal weapons. He's facing 10 years in prison.
And and he's a really bad cop and we're happy that he's facing that. But why is he facing that? Because he ain't rich.
Totally.
Okay, so anyone who denies there's a two-tier justice system in America is probably really rich and doesn't realize the privileges that they have that others don't enjoy.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, a story that absolutely enraged me. People exploiting others having mental health breakdowns and posting videos of it on social media. We'll talk about that story and more when we come back.
All right, so many good comments here. Dr. Zippy McScoots does it again. Meanwhile, back in reality, Trump gave the Russians Israeli intel in the Oval Office. McScoots, I forgot that. You're right. He literally did what he's accusing John Kerry of doing. Amazing, amazing. Graham Henry, by the way, smartest audience. Dr. McScoots, I see you. That's 2 great comments in a row over the last couple of weeks. Anyway, Graham Henry says, the issue is near and dear to me, talking about the prisons in St. Louis. I work with the incarcerated every day, and the carceral state, and cash bail, and prisons. We are torturing people. Graham wrote in again on YouTube Super Chat saying, jails and prisons promote racial and sexual violence. It is torture by any objective definition, and the carceral state. So I want to quadruple down on that. We just think, oh yeah, rape in prisons, totally normal. You know it, it's in all the pop culture. Everybody talks about it like it's, oh yeah, you go to prison, you get raped. Why? That's insane. Oh, you stole a loaf of bread. Oh, well, obviously you get 6 months and rape. What the? So many parts of our system are we just totally accept insanity. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. We'll add rape to your sentence. No, do not let the inmates get raped. This is not complicated. Other European countries, as usual, have solved it. America's like, who would care? And unfortunately, because of our media, a lot of people don't care. All right, so now let me go to our members' comments on TYT.com. Dirge says, don't forget, Rudy likely has dirt on Trump that he uses for leverage. If the feds get that, they might get Trump too, so Trump to the defense. So then Effectos, and that's what we were talking about, Effectos writes in, man, if Biden only made an oversight committee at the federal level to look into prison abuse, and then adds, looks into camera like I'm on The Office. I love it. David Allen writes in, can't afford your bail? Oh well, sit for months in this corona-filled jail without a trial by your peers and hope for the best. Wow, America, when will you pull your head out of your butt?
No, but we should definitely spend time talking about human rights abuses in other countries. We should totally do that.
We spend a lot of time doing that.
Yeah.
All right, by the way, tonight on Twitch, Deep Dive with Jordan Uhl. Juliana Forlano will be on, and it's at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, twitch.tv/TYT. Are you gonna love it? No, I'm not guessing, I'm knowing, yes you will. So check it out. That's tonight at 8:30 p.m. twitch.tv/TYT. If you have Amazon Prime, it's a free subscription, but we get the money. Check it out. Back, TYT, Cenk, Anna, go.
All right. You may have came across a viral video on social media, and I think it's worth talking about. It's a heartbreaking video showing a Holiday Inn employee in the middle of a mental episode. He's having a breakdown. It's very clear he's having a breakdown. And as it's happening, the person filming him, which is a customer, is incredibly cruel, is kind of bullying him throughout the process, and it's difficult to watch. In fact, it's so difficult to watch and so awful that we're not gonna show you the video, but I do think it's important to have a conversation about it because we're in this culture now of constantly filming people, constantly uploading video of people in their worst moments online. And then of course, the court of public opinion chimes in. In this case, clearly the person doing the filming went too far and the person who was on film needed help and unfortunately did not get any compassion from the customer over at the Holiday Inn. Now, there's also a part of this conversation that has to deal with whether Twitter, specifically where this video has gone viral, should take the video down, and I would argue it should. Now, even though we're not gonna show you the video because I wanna protect the identity of the person having the mental episode, I am gonna describe it so you understand just how serious it was. The video, which Tariq Nasheed posted on Twitter, shows the employee hitting himself before walking away in tears during an altercation with a customer who accused the hotel chain of, quote, stealing, end quote, his money. The alleged employee later posted on Reddit that he suffers from bipolar disorder and schizoaffective disorders. In the video, a customer asked the employee why he got mad and hit the computer and was talking or taking out frustrations that his company made a mistake on him. After responding that he hit the computer because he was mad, the employee repeatedly hits himself in the face and bangs his head against the computer monitor. It's really hard to watch. It's clear that he's really suffering there, right? Because he's not hitting anyone else, he's hitting himself, and he's literally banging his head on the computer screen. So at that point, the customer asks, so is this the type of people they have working here? At that point, the employee walks away. He tries to go in the back. The employee says he has to go and that the customer ruined my night, ruined my whole life. He's crying while he's saying this. While the employee is audibly sobbing out of the camera view, the customer walks to the other side of the desk and continues filming. This should have never been posted online. And more importantly, the treatment of this employee by the customer was absolutely disgusting, horrific, and shows you the lack of compassion that we need to fight back against, because clearly the employee here was struggling and needed help, and he didn't get the help or the compassion that he needed in that moment. So Jake, before I give you more details, you wanna jump in?
Yeah, so look, this, what I'll call the attention economy, has driven people to extremes. So if you watch that video, the fact that the guy filmed it in the first place, then put it up, and then won't take it down, and he keeps doubling down on it, it's unbelievable, it's sickening. It's one of the most callous things I've ever seen. The guy is clearly having significant mental issues as he keeps smashing his head against the computer and then sobbing. And instead of going, my God, are you okay? He's like, ha ha, basically like, I got him. No, man, you didn't get him. That's just, you've got to have at least just an iota of human compassion. And this customer did. And by the way, later, the employee said he called me the F word for being
a gay slur.
Yeah. And so I don't know if that's true or not, but it doesn't seem. Anyway, you see the fact pattern here, and now you know what both have said. But everybody's so desperate for attention that since he's the guy who shot the video is getting so much attention for this, I think that's why he's saying, I can't let it go. It's too good. If I take it down, people stop looking at me, and I need everybody to look at me.
Look, I don't even know. By the way, no one knows who the customer is, right? Mm-hmm. The only reason why this went viral is because Tariq Nasheed posted it, and it remains on Twitter. I don't think he's the customer. I don't know where he got the video. He's the one who posted it. That's how it went viral over the weekend. And the reason why this story has continued to develop is because he refuses to take it down, even though there's been significant backlash and demands for him to take it down. It's awful and cruel to keep that video up. And look, what I also don't like is that Tariq Nasheed's excuse for keeping that video up is because of racism. There's no evidence that this employee is racist. This employee, I haven't seen him or seen any report indicating that he did anything racist, said anything racist. If there's more context that maybe Tariq Nasheed isn't sharing, maybe he should share that. But there's nothing. There's nothing. And so I want to give you more from the employee himself and what he had to say, because later he went on Reddit and he said, this is not one of my best moments. Mental illness is real and it literally can destroy lives. All I wanted to do was help them, which I couldn't because at that point in my hands were tied. And I'm not a manager, but I'm overworked, right? And then he says, but if they pressure me and try to argue with me, I don't know how to handle it usually, right? And if you watch the video, that is what's happening. And despite his moment of distress, the pressure continues. He also said right before he started his recording, I told him I have a mental illness and I need a moment to think, before he just kept going and going and going and going before it became too much. And listen, customer service jobs are difficult. I know from personal experience, a lot of people know from personal experience. Sometimes you're having a bad day and customers are piling on and it's difficult to keep it cool. Imagine trying to keep it cool when you have two mental health issues, bipolar disorder and schizoaffective disorder. It's just, again, like if we just take a moment, like take a breath and try to think about why someone's reacting the way that they're reacting. But instead of doing that, everyone gets their phones out and everyone starts judging. And so let me get to the Tariq Nasheed part, because he refuses to take it down, as I mentioned. Twitter should take it down, really, but Twitter has remained silent on this issue. And I want to give you 2 tweets from Nasheed. He says, quote, "All that phony outrage and coordinated trolling was used as a smokescreen to allow Holiday Inn to wiggle their way out of being held responsible."
No, it wasn't.
Responsible for what? What exactly are they responsible for?
There's no evidence that the kid even did anything wrong. So what the hell are you talking about? So look, guys, have we covered hundreds of cases of overt racism, and by the way, sometimes implicit racism? Have we explained what white privilege is? Have we done all that here on the Young Turks? To the point where the right wing despises us and they think we do, they accuse us of white racism, hilarious, all this nonsense, right? But that doesn't mean that every charge of racism is true. Of course, you have to use human judgment, right? And so the right wing goes to an obvious extreme. Oh, I never see racism anywhere. Tim Scott yesterday in the response to Biden, no, there's no racism. No, what racism? What are you talking? He explained cases of racism against him. He then accuses progressives of being racist against him, and then he says there's no racism. No, racism is real. Unfortunately, it's overwhelming oftentimes, but false charges of racism hurt tremendously. Okay, because it allows all those right wingers to go, oh yeah, it's all like Tariq Nasheed. Yeah, I saw the video. The poor kid didn't do anything wrong, and he's sobbing, and the guy has no sympathy for him. Okay, and so it's counterproductive. And do we have to use judgment to? And again, with the standard when we had the Me Too movement, believe the woman means don't disbelieve the woman automatically, which is what they used to do in the past. It doesn't mean every allegation is by definition true. That's absurd. And no progressive would ever think that, because we actually believe in a fair justice system and being fair just in general in society, right? And giving people an opportunity and actually looking at the evidence. Here, they have no evidence of racism at all. And they have an evidence of whoever shot the film and then Tariq Nasheed for putting it out of being incredibly callous towards this person. And now finally, I want to say one thing. Look, the body cameras and then everybody shooting the footage has been amazing and has brought accountability we never had in this country. And again, the person who shot the video of George Floyd being killed by Derek Chauvin did an enormous service to our society. So, but a good thing, always the pendulum swings too far, right? Even with a great thing. So now this is evidence of it beginning to swing too far. Okay, now everybody wants to catch something bad on tape so they can get famous. And now, for the first time, I'm beginning to see people pushing it and creating things that aren't really there.
Yeah, I mean, look, when we talk about cancel culture, I think that it's a nuanced topic, because I don't agree with those who reject that cancel culture exists. I also don't agree with those who consider everything cancel culture. Like Barry Weiss is like, I'm a victim of cancel culture. No, you're not. You're privileged. You're still working. You're doing fine. But cancel culture in a form does exist, and usually it overwhelmingly negatively impacts average people who have no power. And this is an example of that. The person filming it was hoping that everyone would watch that video, and this kid, essentially, I don't know how old he is, but he looks like a kid, is gonna get canceled. Everyone's gonna pile on him. And we have to ask ourselves, what is it that makes people, what makes us wanna see that happen? Why do we want to enjoy that kind of public backlash or outrage toward, in this case, a private individual, right? He's just a worker at a Holiday Inn.
Yeah, and guys, so often, this is a general fact about all politics and all the conversations we have, everybody falls into camps, right? So either everything is racist or nothing is racist. No, the reality is you gotta use judge, it's so obvious, right? Either you should film everything, you should film nothing. You should have no judgment, including the people with power who break the law all the time, or you should have extreme judgment all the time. Oh, the kid had a bad day and he's got a mental illness and he's smashing the computer with his own head and sobbing uncontrollably. No, we judge you, we judge you. No, don't judge that kid, Jesus Christ. Don't you have any sense at all? So no, we're a rare show that actually asks you to use your mind. And we believe in you, and we believe you could make the right judgment calls. And part of our job is to present the facts to you and say, oh, okay, not everything is simple, not everything is binary, not everything is black and white. And it turns out you could have big general phenomenon of, for example, horrific racism in the country, historically and today, but still have some things not be racist. And same for sexism, same for all of these issues. Please use your minds. It's not too much to ask for.
When we come back from the break, I'm gonna tell you why Kevin McCarthy does not deserve cookies.
First of all, if you missed the beginning of the show, fun news for everybody. Old School is going to be live now. It's on Mondays. It's going to be at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, and it's going to be 45 minutes. And then you're going to get if you're a member, you get a whole nother episode for another 45 minutes. So you get the full hour and a half. So become a member at tyt.com/join. But if you're not a member, it's okay. Everybody can watch Old School live now, at least the first episode, Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget, oh, by the way, for example, Justin Davis just joined on YouTube by hitting the join button below. If you're at the $4.99 level, you get the post game. Today we're gonna do a really fun post game. The people who wake up early, are they better off? Are they annoying people? The science is in. One of us is one of these people. Is that person guilty or innocent? We're gonna find out in the post game. Members are gonna find out. Okay, there's the chitter chatter on the streets about it. tyt.com/join or at the Essentials level on YouTube if you hit that join button, and you could upgrade through that join button as well. And by the way, to get all of our shows, that's the $9.99 level. That's a premium level on YouTube. You can upgrade through that same button. And Rachel Muse just joined. Rachel, American hero, welcome. Now I'm going to Twitch. So about kerosene, okay, interesting handle. Just send us a heart. Heart right back at you about kerosene. Dave Skywalker just became a member. Say hi to your brother Luke. Actually, he watches the show, at least Mark Hamill does. Donnie C, not a big deal, I just dropped that in there. Donnie C says, just thank you. It's a very pleasant note, I appreciate it. Just Bob writes in, I don't know what I'm doing.
It's okay, you're gonna be all right. Just hang in there. You keep going, just keep pushing forward. We got
Bob,
you.
I got news for you. Most people don't know what they're doing. So you're in good company, don't sweat it. Oh, you know what? I wanna read a Screamo Dragon asked for a dad joke. I couldn't come up with one, but Big Rick Energy's here to help. So Rick Strom watching the show texted in, what do sprinters eat before a race? Nothing, they fast.
That's pretty good.
Okay.
I hate to admit it. Yeah.
Check out Big Rick Energy after the show on Mondays, okay? Now, I gotta read you this great comment. Ashes0610 wrote in on Twitch, so glad I found this community. Everyone is so awesome. Love you all, but I have to say that Anna is inspiring me to no end.
Aww.
I have anxiety, and seeing you stand in your power and truth gives me confidence I can be a strong woman too. Much love, everyone.
You got it, girl. You go for it. You can be a strong woman. Who's gonna stop you?
Who's gonna stop you, Ashes? We got your back, okay? Believe in yourself. So look, one of the things I'm most proud of is that Anna Kasparian is the executive producer and one of the hosts of the show. The strength that she has and that she gives. Okay. I'm serious. I love it. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk and Anna with you guys. Oh, did you catch me having Too Strong Coffee? TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT helps progressive causes and gets you great coffee. Back to you, Anna.
All right, okay. Thank God. All right, let's talk about McCarthy. So, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is like most useless members of Congress. He wants credit for doing less than the bare minimum. But we're here today to explain to you why Kevin McCarthy gets no cookies. No cookies for you, I'm sorry. So McCarthy wanted some credit because he was super strong and standing up against Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene when she wanted to do her whole racist America First caucus to protect Anglo-Saxon values. But the fact of the matter is, he just shows that he's a spineless narcissist in so many different cases. For instance, he's so bratty that he couldn't get himself to clap at something that's obviously worth clapping for. During Joe Biden's address to a joint session of Congress, he mentioned replacing old lead-ridden pipes in schools. And take a look at how McCarthy responded.
Up to 10 million homes in America and more than 400,000 schools and child care centers have pipes with lead in them, including drinking water. A clear and present danger to our children's health. American Jobs Plan creates jobs replacing 100% of the nation's lead pipes and service lines, so every American can drink clean water.
What a crappy I mean, look, I get that they're just completely driven by politics, but how do you not clap for that? Like, do you disagree with that? Do you think it's okay to have old lead pipes that make people sick? Is that cool with you? You don't like it? You're offended by that? No, no cookies for you.
Yeah. Oh, I stood up to Lauren Boebert, and I stood up against clean water. Congrats, you must be so proud. But guys, it's a funny story and with a very funny intro. It is indicative of what's happened in America. The Republican Party has become so extreme. Look, I know because I've been covering politics for way too long, unfortunately. And in the old days, both parties would stand and clap as a matter of course for simple lines like, "Oh, our troops are the greatest in the world." Okay, right? And oh my God, America is #1. Clean water, clean air. Like nobody meant anything, but they would just do it, right? As now the Republican Party is so extreme, they're like, clean water. Who needs it, right? And the masks to keep you healthy. I hate them. Smear the coronavirus on yourself. Vaccine to keep you. Lead pipes, yes, lead pipes. Okay, I mean. And 40% of the country is here for it. They're like, oh yeah, I don't want the clean water. I bet Bill Gates made the water clean.
They don't even ever hear about the clean water. That's the problem.
That is the problem.
I mean, do you think that they're sitting around watching Joe Biden's speech? Probably not.
Yeah.
They're probably watching Fox News and whatever their post-speech commentary is, which is typically terrible and doesn't actually talk about what Biden's proposing. But what I just find so fascinating is that there's this trend of Republican lawmakers not even doing the bare minimum, right? In telling the truth or applauding policies that make sense and would actually benefit the lives of their own constituents. Like they don't do any of that, but they'll do small things like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have an America First racist caucus. Maybe that's a bad idea. I'm gonna just quietly say that and try to get Marjorie Taylor Greene to stop it. Wow, congratulations! Wow, you're so strong. It's just you get no credit. I'm tired of people in positions of power expecting us to applaud their mediocre behavior and how poorly they do their jobs. And it doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. I mean, just yesterday we talked about a New York Post reporter who first wrote a fake story about Kamala Harris that she was allegedly forced to write, and then after writing it, she quit. And everyone's like, I get the sense that she wanted credit for it.
Yeah.
No credit. You quit before you published the fake news story. You quit before, but she didn't do that.
She didn't. Last thing on this, it also gives you an indication of where the Democratic Party is. So if they were an effective party, they would take a position like the Republicans saying, no, we're not really in favor of clean water. We don't spend money on that. And you would bludgeon them politically. You would come out and you'd say every day, the Republicans don't want you to have clean water. They don't want your kids to have clean water. You know what happens if there's lead in the water? It causes brain damage in your children. That's a fact, that's true. So and the Republicans want your kids to have brain damage. What the hell is wrong with them? And force the media to go, well, now technically it is true, lead does cause brain damage. Then they'll try to find an on the other hand. On the other hand, it creates more Republican voters. And what are we talking about? How Republicans don't want clean water, they want lead in the water, and they want your kids to have brain damage. Politics is oftentimes not complicated, yet the Democrats will do, you know it, everybody watching knows it, they'll do none of that. They never fight back.
A good politician has a healthy inventory of carrots and sticks. And so Democrats don't get cookies either because they don't use carrots or sticks. They just say wonderful things that they allegedly want to accomplish and then they don't actually fight to accomplish them. So second part of the McCarthy story and why he doesn't get any cookies is the fact that he keeps pushing these lies about how Biden is gonna ration red meat as part of his climate plan. That's already been debunked, but it doesn't stop Kevin McCarthy from spreading the lie.
We've been down this road, it's called Solyndra. Why double down on stupid?
He just continues. He wants control of your life. He's going to control how much meat you can eat. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, it's interesting that that exchange happened on Fox News, the very same cable news network that issued this correction.
On Friday, we told you about a study from the University of Michigan to give some perspective on President Biden's ambitious climate change goals. That research from 2020 found that cutting back how much red meat people eat would have a drastic impact on harmful greenhouse gas emissions. The data was accurate, but a graphic and a script incorrectly implied that it was part of Biden's plan for dealing with climate change. That is not the case.
Yeah, that is not the case, but Kevin McCarthy will continue spreading that lie.
And did Sean Hannity correct him? Of course not, because what do the Republicans do? It actually is smart politics. They repeat and repeat and repeat, but they just don't care if it's a lie. It's amazing. They're like, yeah, we all know it's a lie. Who cares? We'll get everybody to believe it. 40% of the country will believe it. Why would you care about truth and morality? That's the Republican Party. Meanwhile, Democrats have the things that are actually true on their side. They're like, don't say it. It might be rude to say it. Oh my God. The only thing Biden said about Republicans yesterday was that he really approved of them coming up with their own plans. Like he said, I applaud them. That was the only reference to Republicans.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Last thing on this, Solyndra was an old school talking point that the Fox News tried during the Obama years. One company that went into green energy failed, that American government had financed to some degree, subsidized, right? But then the reason they dropped it is because that program that Obama ran to subsidize green energy was enormously successful. Not only did it develop the industry, but it made a profit and brought tons of money back into the government. But everybody's forgotten that. So Hannity goes, oh, I saw like Solyndra, remember? Okay, yeah, that's what I thought, Hannity. They're all liars, they really are. They really are. They're serial liars.
If they didn't lie though, what would they talk about? Like really think about it. And I know I repeat this point a lot, but bear with me because I think it's relevant and it applies. What do Republicans offer you? What do they offer you? What are their solutions? What are their policy proposals? They complain about all of these parts of government. They complain about all of these policy proposals. They complain about the Affordable Care Act. They had all that time to come up with a replacement for the Affordable Care Act. What did they have? Nothing, nothing. So what are they gonna offer you? Nothing. What are they gonna do when they do these interviews? Just lie, just attack the other side. That's why with Republicans, all you get is lies and attacks on cable news. And with Democrats, yeah, you'll get proposals, but you won't get a fight.
And then you'll get surrender afterwards. That's why, to back up Anna's point, in this particular story, so what is the Republican proposal of getting the lead out of the water? None, they don't have one. They just go, burgers, squirrel.
Totally.
That's the Republican Party.
Yep. All right, well, let's talk about redistricting. Okay. But there is a fun angle to this. So Ted Cruz decided to pick a fight with Daily Show host Trevor Noah, and it was sparked by the comedian's commentary about New York losing a congressional district, while states like Texas and I believe Florida also picked up seats in their states. And this is all, of course, according to the population count that was done by the census in 2020. Now, there are issues with that, right? Because the census was done during a pandemic. So I'm a little worried about how that was all conducted. But let's put that aside for now and just focus on the fact that Cruz decided to attack Trevor Noah, and he wrote that Trevor Noah whines that people are fleeing high-tax blue states and moving in droves to low-tax states like Texas, where the jobs are, doesn't understand why people like Freedom, also predicts the Biden years will be the Great Depression. And Trevor Noah, or The Daily Show, tweeted back and said, "Not sure I'd be using the words fleeing and Texas in the same sentence, Senator Cancun." And of course, Ted Cruz responds back and says, "I wear your scorn with pride. I remember when The Daily Show was funny." To which Jon Stewart responds to and says, "You remember last night? Bravo."
Yeah, now the reason Stewart says that, of course, is because Ted Cruz is obviously full of crap. And so he never found The Daily Show funny. The Daily Show has always been the same. I don't mean in terms of host, but in terms of making fun of the powerful. That's why we like it. That's why it's popular. That's why it's funny. And the Republicans are the powerful, and then they despise the idea of anyone making fun of them. So like, oh, I remember when I used to be funny. And Jon Stewart's like, yeah, that was me that you're referring to, and I used to kick your ass every day, and last night was funny. And by the way, if you're wondering why the hell is Ted Cruz like getting into this weird census Twitter spat? All the Republicans learned, none of the Democrats except the progressives learned that Twitter spats are great for you because the entire media talks about it.
Like us.
Yes, let's keep it real, right? And so get into as many fights as you can. That's part of why Ted Cruz is doing it. Second reason is not just because of the census. I watched the whole clip. At one point they say, actually population is going down overall in the entire country. There's actually less immigrants and there's a lower birth rate, but we're not sure if it's because of this picture. And they put up a picture of Ted Cruz.
Oh.
That's why it got under his skin.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And yeah, the birth rate is low. Nobody's getting pregnant tonight. For obvious reasons, by the way. I mean, that is something to be concerned about. People aren't having kids for economic reasons. Having children in the United States is particularly difficult to do because there isn't much of a support system. And millennials are, believe it or not, genuinely concerned about climate change. So the population changes are relevant to the conversation. I didn't know that was part of Trevor Noah's commentary on the show, but yeah, that's amazing.
So the last tweet was the best, if you ask me. So then Daily Show / Trevor Noah comes back with, and with that, Ted Cruz has officially fought back harder against a tweet from a late night show than he ever did when Trump called his wife ugly.
But it's true. It's funny because it's true.
Exactly. Instead, of course, as we all know, Ted Cruz went on to phone bank for Donald Trump and spent most of the Trump's term, well, you know where he spent it. Inside a cavity of Donald Trump. And so, but nothing's ever gonna beat that picture of Ted Cruz phone banking for Trump, like, so sad.
Inside a cavity of Trump, certainly not in the orifices of the nose.
No, not in the orifices of the nose. So, look, my favorite thing out of that whole awesome debacle was when Ted Cruz, in the beginning, when he thought he could beat Trump, when his wife gets called ugly the first time, comes out and says, I'm gonna get Donald Trump and he thinks he's a bully and I'm gonna stand up to him and I'm gonna show him who's tough. Few moments later, okay, a couple of months later, he's like, oh, please elect Donald Trump. He thinks my wife is ugly, yeah, but it helps my political career. There it is.
It's
favorite picture of all time. You loser, you beta, you total wimp. And he called his dad a murderer, Trump did. And oh my God, you
called him the Zodiac killer.
And look at him, you pathetic, pathetic man. I can't believe Democrats can't beat that guy. Jesus, I don't care if he's in Mississippi or Alabama. You gotta be able to beat him. Anyways, you should be careful what they wish for. Back to the census for 1 second. Just because you're picking up 2 seats in Texas doesn't mean they're gonna be red seats. There's a burgeoning population in Texas. It's much more complicated. It's growing to be more purple, but nothing is set in stone. And the way that, and it's all in the gerrymandering. And so it's certainly possible that the Republicans are not going to get those seats.
Yeah, I mean, look, the one thing that's difficult is Republicans do have a point about the situation in California. It is a high tax state, and it does have serious problems, including homelessness, and our local lawmakers are complete garbage. Just keeping it real. Postgame is next. You guys are gonna love it.
Yeah, lots of controversy. Okay, we need you to settle it. I'll predict right here for you, Chris. I think Donald Trump will leave office before his term is up. He'll be humiliated, embarrassed, and I know him. He's not gonna wanna lose, and he's gonna run for the hills.
You got that bet all day long.
Okay, let's get after it. Now, so look, Jake has made some good predictions, and this is in good fun. I could not disagree more.
There's a little bromance between the two of them. You got that bet all day long, Janky, you. Oh, you stop. In the meantime, let's call him out on the damage.
No, but
I just got a Roku set. Did basically a little bit of channel surfing, and I was like, there we are.
Yeah.
There we are. And then I turned it on, and it was John and Brett on Damage Report making fun of me.
Oh no.
So you are so busted. I even took a picture of it, okay? They're talking about my predictions. I got a new prediction for you, John Idarola.
You're doing a show that's blowing the doors off everybody.
Young Turks is the largest online news network, not a big deal. We're gonna rock the boat. We're gonna be counter-establishment. We're gonna tell people the truth to the best of our abilities. We're so sick of this corruption. We're not the robots on TV. I actually care about the news. Guilty, I care. 4th day on Occupy Wall Street. Last night we launched Wolfpack. It's us pushing our ideas out there, trying to help the country in every way that we can, trying to make this place just a little bit better. Reporting from the Hillary-Bernie debate, I gotta be honest, you know what we do, we cover it for real. For us, this system isn't working. Free and fair elections.
And when he told the cops that day, when they came to drag her away, and he said, if you're gonna chain her, you're gonna chain me. If you're gonna arrest her, you're gonna arrest me.
Joseph Kyle. I do audio for the main show, The Young Turks. I also do audio for Postgame. I started in 2006. I met Cenk Uygur at the Iraq for Sale screening that was directed by Robert Greenwald. And watching that, I want to figure out a way to be part of something that's genuine and authentic.
Certainly not in the orifices of the nose. There was a fire that rose up in them. There's the anus.
All right, I'm gonna read one comment. Ida S wrote in on YouTube Super Chat. Anna is wonderful. She should do a GRWM. You know what that means? I didn't know either. It's Get Ready With Me, where she tells us all how to do our brows like hers too.
You know, it's funny, like there actually is no fancy secret that I have. I was just blessed with really nice eyebrows. Really, like I don't pluck them often. I'll just like maybe get a few strays here or there, but like my eyebrows have always been nice. Like I don't know why. It's obviously genetics. My brother has nice eyebrows too.
No, I know.
Yeah.
It's the geographic region from where we come.
Really?
Yeah, I mean.
I'm Armenian.
Yeah, I'm Turkish. We have excellent eyebrows.
Are Armenians and Turks known for excellent eyebrows? I don't think that's a thing.
I gotta be honest with you, they are now.
Actually, you know what? They are now because, you know, eyebrows, much like other parts of fashion and our bodies or whatever, like it goes through trends. And so like in the 1920s, if you look at what was trendy for women's eyebrows, they did like the little like super skinny, like half like semicircle thing.
Oh yeah.
Not hot anymore. Definitely not hot anymore.
They love those semicircles.
They love the semicircles.
It was not working for them. Yeah.
And now bushy eyebrows are in, definitely.
Well, then I'm in business.
Yeah.
Okay. So how come nobody's asking me for a GRWM? I mean, how do I get this sexy? Nobody wants to know. I find that kind of weird. Okay, anyways.
You do have a good base for your eyebrows. Like if you wanted to like shape them, you got a lot to work with, which is good.
Yeah, I'm thinking of going semicircle. Seeing how that turns out. No, I do. I have a very healthy base. Perhaps needs to be trimmed a little bit more regularly. But anyways, all right, what's next?
Let's talk about drugs. So, this is a fun story. A marketing startup CEO has been fired. And the reason why he's been fired is because he was found to be microdosing on LSD. And it turns out that the board, it's always the board, wasn't too happy about it. Iterable is the name of the company. This is the marketing startup we're talking about. And they notified their employees that the company's board had dismissed Justin Zhu, an alumnus of Google and Twitter, who co-founded the $2 million San Francisco-based startup along with Andrew Bonney in 2013. No one knows who Andrew Bonney is, and that's an irrelevant part of the story. But while the message to employees cited unspecified violations of company policy, Zhu said he was ousted for taking LSD before a meeting in 2019. The former chief executive said he was experimenting with microdosing, which means taking a low dose of the drug to boost his focus. Zhu has been replaced. Oh, I guess Bonney is kind of relevant because he's been replaced by Bonney, who wrote in an email to staff that his co-founder's behavior undermined the board's confidence in Justin's ability to lead the company going forward. So I guess I need a few more details because there were no examples given. So if you're showing up to work feeling a little too good, that could be problematic. I totally get that. But it seems like Zhu, it seems like he takes his job seriously, right? Worked at Google and Twitter, he co-founded this company, this startup.
And it's a multi-billion-dollar company.
Is it a multi-billion-dollar company now?
Yeah, it's over $2 billion now.
Oh, I thought, oh Jesus.
No, they wrote it wrong in the article, that's why. They said 2 million in one place, so I double checked. It's over $2 billion.
Let him go. Like, let him go. No, okay. Look, I don't know. I don't know enough details. Maybe he was acting crazy at work, right?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So, look, they probably didn't want to get into the details for understandable reasons. If you're gonna dismiss the guy, you don't need to rub it in if he was acting crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm so mixed on the story.
Yeah.
So that's why it's an interesting story. Number one, if you did LSD at work, you'd be fired. Let's just keep it real. Okay, so that's. I mean, now would you? I don't know.
What would you do if I came to work high on LSD?
Well, that's another wrinkle in the story, which is that I probably couldn't tell, right? So like, since I'm such a square, I never realized that people were drunk or high at work or in other areas outside of, like, obviously at dinner and clubs and stuff. I know people are drunk. I'm not that square, right? But like, I remember one time I was working at a place and I was like, yeah, Bob's kind of a funny guy, right? And he does these things I don't quite get. And it might have actually literally been Ben, but a friend of mine was like, that's because he's on cocaine nonstop. And I was like, oh my God, really? And I remember thinking back then, and I'm a grown ass man, right? And I was thinking, is that allowed? And how does he work like that? How does he work on drugs? Do people do that? Okay, and it turns out people do that. And you know who does it a lot, and that's why another reason why this story is interesting is some of the richest people in the world.
Yes.
So those Silicon Valley executives, that is an absolute trend that they do microdosing. There's no question about it, and I have heard personal stories about it. Okay?
Yeah, so both Bill Gates and Steve Jobs have talked openly about their experimentation with LSD. And you're right, look, I wasn't being 100% serious when I said let him go. Like I said, I need more details. If he was being problematic at work, obviously you gotta let him go. But I do have a serious point to make about using drugs at work, because far more people do it than I think you realize.
Well, apparently.
Yeah, and it's not to have fun. I think that the current working conditions that a lot of people are undergoing convinces them that they need to use certain narcotics, certain drugs, certain supplements in order to get through the day. So for instance, there's a giant trend of journalists on amphetamines, on things like Adderall to get through the day. That is a thing, and obviously with college students, that's a long reported story. So the abuse of stimulants is very common. So like the question is, what is it about the workplace that makes workers think that they need to take something to have more focus, or they need to take something in order to get through a typical workday? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, not buying it.
Neither was Brett. You and Brett, man, birds of a feather.
Yeah, us.
Birds of
me
a
and
feather.
Brett. Okay, birds of whatever feather, okay? All right, so.
He got fired up about this during the production.
Yeah, so no, you don't have to be on drugs to do your job. No, then, look, now this is easy to say, and I don't mean to be callous about it, but like, try hard. I know it's not easy to get a different job where you don't have to be stoned or whatever to do it, right? You don't have to numb the pain to do that job. It's super easy to say, I know it's hard to do, but try to go in that direction. You're going, oh, I hate this job, but you know what? I'm just gonna do meth while I'm here. It's not the right answer, it just isn't, okay? And I don't know what people are like on LSD, so maybe it's super obvious, maybe it isn't. And I wanna distinguish, Bill Gates, I'm surprised, I didn't know Bill Gates did it. I know Steve Jobs did it. I'm super surprised Bill Gates did it and admitted it. And so Bill Gates and Steve Jobs experimenting with LSD is different than the current trend, okay? The current trend is, and it's not just LSD, it's shrooms and other things, where a giant percentage of Silicon Valley executives are microdosing. That's why this probably sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley. Like, wait, could we be fired for being high on the job nonstop? Yeah, and look, microdosing. Yeah, you can call it microdosing, but you're high, dude. That's why you did it.
I'm actually shocked that anyone would be surprised that there would be consequences for microdosing once it's revealed that an executive at a company is microdosing. Because think about it. What happened immediately after Elon Musk, during his own time, while doing a podcast with Joe Rogan, decided to smoke weed? He's not on the job. I mean, look, I have no love for Elon Musk, don't get me wrong, but who cares? He's smoking weed. He's not on the clock, not that he's ever really on the clock, but you get what I'm saying. He's enjoying a conversation. He took a hit of the marijuana that Joe Rogan gave him, and then the stock price of Tesla went tumbling as a result of that. Temporarily, of course, but people still panic about drug use, even when it comes to drug use when people are on their own time, enjoying themselves and using something as relatively benign as marijuana.
Yeah, I thought that was the craziest controversy I've ever seen. We did a poll, Elon Musk, yes or no. Our audience voted about 3/4 no. It was just that simple.
They get it.
So they get it, and we're not pro Elon Musk, but we're fair.
We're definitely fair.
Yeah. So. Having marijuana is the equivalent of having a beer. So you can't have a beer on your off time that causes your stock price to plummet. That's insane. So, and if I was the board of or the shareholders of Tesla, I'd be like, look, dude, proof's in the pudding. Is the stock price going up or down? Now, there's other factors that should be good to your employees, the community, et cetera. But like to me, I wouldn't care if I was in that position if Elon Musk was high on the job from marijuana or LSD. I would care. Is he doing the right things? Yes, profitable. My God, Tesla is through the roof. I mean, if he's high on the job, in their position, they'd be like, get everybody some weed, right? So look, I think again, I want to be clear. There's other factors. You should also be good to your employees and all those other things. But the last thing I'll say though about what again, this is such a fascinating story. Is that they make LSD sound so good, and I don't.
Jesus Christ!
No, I'm serious.
Please
I've never taken.
Don't.
No, I know. But Steve Jobs had this quote. My job is to report the news. He said that taking the drug was, quote, one of the most important things in my life.
Okay, so I'm sure he meant that, and I do want to talk about the actual medicinal aspect of this, about magic mushrooms and LSD, because there have been some studies. Researchers, scientists have been doing studies on the possibility of using these substances to help people who are suffering from PTSD, depression, anxiety, stuff like that. And so just to give you one example, the Journal of Psychopharmacology published a study in 2016 in which researchers found that a one-time single dose of psilocybin, and that's magic mushrooms, offered rapid improvements in the levels of anxiety, depression, and dread of death in cancer patients. A recent update found that the single dose combined with psychotherapy led to long-lasting improvements in these patients approximately 5 years later. So there have been more and more of these studies coming out showing that there is actually medicinal use for it, but obviously under a controlled environment, right? Yeah. And coupled with therapy as well.
Well, look, if you've been watching The Young Turks for the last couple of years, you know that I've fallen in love with Mary Jane. And so it's had some of those effects on me, and I feel great, and et cetera. It helps me focus, and also it gets me high, which I rather enjoy. Okay, so people never say that. They're like, "Oh, it's just for the medicine and my joints and stuff." No, it's also to get high, and it's awesome. So you do that on your off time, et cetera. And if you're a mess at work, of course that there should be ramifications for that. But then I thought, Jesus, a little bit of weed gives me that effect. What would I be like on shrooms?
Shrooms is so different though, Cenk. It's very different. And I mean, I've openly talked about my experience with mushrooms. The first time I tried it, which was in a tea form, it was mild and I rather enjoyed it. The second and third time, which was the last time I did it, it was the worst. It was the worst of times, but also the best of times, because the experience as I was experiencing it was awful. It brings up all these awful things that you didn't even realize you needed to deal with. And then the next day you feel like this massive weight has been lifted off of your shoulders.
Stop, because you're totally talking me into it.
No, okay, so maybe cool, but just know, like I was sobbing uncontrollably the entire time. It was not enjoyable while I was experiencing it.
No, I know, but sobbing isn't coming for me. I'm coming for sobbing.
Okay, that's what you think.
I mean, coming for sobbing doesn't really help. Okay, but I like that kind of stuff of dealing with issues, sorting things out, solving things. So who knows? Anyways, guys, just be careful, okay? And don't go around doing meth at work. It's a bad idea. And if you're gonna take LSD, it's a super powerful drug. Be super duper careful with it. And I would not recommend doing it at work, and neither would Zoo.
All right, so let's talk about early birds. I love this topic. So, a study shows that there are actually a lot more people in the country, in the world, who wake up early. These natural risers, people who don't set an alarm and typically wake up naturally before 5:30 in the morning. These people exist, okay? I'm not the only one.
Oh, I knew it. Confession right there on air, okay? So how often do you wake up before 5:30?
I don't set an alarm. And I wake up before 5:30, I would say 95% of the time.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I don't like it. In fact, I never get to sleep in during the weekends, which I really want to be able to do.
So you wake up at 5:30 on the weekends?
Always. I'm always awake. Not always, because there's 5% of the time, maybe like I got lucky and I was able to sleep a little bit longer, right? But I wake up naturally, and in fact, I usually wake up once in the middle of the night. And when I do that, I usually have my fingers crossed that it's time to get up. Because if it's like 1:30 in the morning, it means I have to try to go back to sleep. And I don't want to go back to sleep. I want to get up and start the day. Like
at 1:30, wow.
Yeah, but luckily, more often than not, I'm able to go back to sleep, and then I'll wake up
God.
before 5:30. Yeah, but I like reading the science into this and the studies into this, so I want to share the. Gee, I thought you were an early riser.
No, I'm forced into being an early riser, and I hate it. Normally, when I was a kid, I used to in the summers, I sleep 12 hours on the regular. And I'd go sleep in the basement where there's no sunlight, and I just comatose. It's some of my favorite moments of my life was when I was not conscious. So I love sleeping, but because I have to work so much, like when I used to do the MSNBC show or the Current show at the same time, I had to get up at 5 in the morning to have a prayer of getting both shows ready by showtime, right? And so now I got kids and I'm waking up early to spend time with them in the mornings, but never have I enjoyed it. I have always woken up with like, so, and now because I've done it so much, I'm beginning to wake up naturally at a much earlier time, which I generally despise, and I hope I can beat out of my body as soon as I'm able to.
The worst part about being a morning person, which I am, is that most people are not morning people, right? So even though there are more morning people out there than I even expected, obviously the vast majority of people want to sleep in and they're not morning people. So I remember when I used to go traveling with Christian in the beginning of our relationship. Now we're married and I don't care what he thinks. But in the beginning of our relationship, we were like dating.
By the way, that's the most true thing that you'll hear in the whole video.
Totally.
Okay, and it has nothing to do with Christian or Anna. It's just blanket, you know it.
It used to stress me out when we would travel together because obviously we're in a hotel room and it's like 5:25 and I'm up, I'm ready to go. And he's asleep. And so I don't want to wake him up. But I also don't know what to do. Do I just like lay there in the dark, right? It's awkward and I'm bored and I want him to wake up already. And I can't turn on the TV. It was the worst. And so when we finally got married, I'm like, oh, thank God. Now I'm gonna turn the TV on. I already got the ring, I'm good.
Oh my God. Look, on the one hand, shame, okay.
I'm actually kidding. I don't.
On the other hand,
no,
on the other hand, hashtag truth. Okay.
No, now I'm actually a lot better about like, okay, I'm just gonna put my clothes on and go for a walk. So I'll go out for a walk by myself.
It's called leaving.
Totally.
Yeah, because I get up now when on vacation. Sometimes I get up before the kids, and certainly before Wendy, who is a very late sleeper. And so yeah, I love it. I go outside and I go chill and stuff. I don't just turn on the TV in full blast like I already got the ring. What do they know about it? Oh, we got 2 kids. Oh, got it. Okay. I used to date a face stroker. So she didn't want to wake me up, right? Because that seemed rude. So she just started stroking my face in the morning, like theoretically affectionately. And I thought, like what is on my face? Oh, come on. Okay, just wait. Like it's better to just wake me up. It's okay, right?
That is the funniest and also like the creepiest thing I've ever heard. Like, how did that?
She's a good person. She didn't mean harm by it. We don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, she's just stroking your face while you're sleeping.
I know. Don't face stroke people awake. Just don't. That's okay. It's just a public service announcement.
Okay, so let's finally get to what the research shows.
Is that? Oh, we're doing a news story.
Yeah,
right,
yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah. Research.
All right, so professor of neurology at the University of California at San Francisco teamed up with this guy named Christopher Jones. He's a neurologist at the University of Utah. And what they did is they ran this sleep clinic for 10 years. So you know there's like some interesting information here, right? Mm-hmm. So here's what we know. Over the course of 10 years, Jones asked 2,422 patients questions such as, if you had to take a test tomorrow, what would the best time to take the test be? And when would you be the best, or when would be the best time to exercise? Those who had answered with some of the earliest times were then asked whether they typically woke up by 5:30 a.m. It turned out that the 8 patients, or 1 out of every 300 did so. For 5 of those patients, this so-called advanced sleep phase was genetic, thanks mom and dad, meaning that they had multiple relatives who woke up extremely early too. Mm-hmm. Actually, neither one of my parents wake up extremely early. I don't know where I got it from. Now let's get to the actual interesting part. I wanted to give you the context of the study that they did. So are there advantages to being an early riser?
Now, finally, let's get to it.
Okay.
So can I just say, I know because obviously I read the story, but before I read the story, my guess was, no, they always lord that over us, the early risers. Oh, I'm getting a lot done, the early bird gets the worm. I'm like, yeah, unless you're the early worm, in which case you got eaten by the bird. And so it depends, doesn't it? And Bill Clinton, for example, used to stay up till 2, 3. I used to stay up till 2, 3 back in the day. So then they're like, no, it's better by definition to get up in the morning. Why? Maybe I'm putting in more time working than you are. I'm just doing it at a different time. No, being early is always good. So let's find out. Is it or not?
All right, well, it turns out that there are some advantages to being a natural early riser. Extreme larks, The Atlantic writes, wake up more easily than others, and they don't tend to sleep in on weekends, which is true, as many others do. Early hours are cherished, filled with self-improving activities such as exercise, true, and meditation, true. True, I can totally relate to that. They might even be healthier than people who are night owls. Late bedtimes are associated with some negative health consequences such as type 2 diabetes and heart disease.
That last part's nonsense. It's true, but it isn't whether you are, it doesn't have anything to do with your sleep pattern. It has to do with if you go to bed late, it's because a lot of times you're going to get a late night snack, you're having late dinner, you're going to the clubs, you're drinking. That's what's leading to the bad health.
Yeah.
Not the amount of sleep you got or when you got the sleep, right? A lot of the larks, which
he's getting real defensive.
Okay,
all right,
I'm just saying.
Everything's gonna be okay.
All right, I mean, so these extreme larks is a new word I did not know, which is hilarious already. They go to bed around 8:30 a.m. Yeah, of course you're not gonna have any health problems. You didn't live life.
We don't go to bed
you didn't
at
have
8:30
a single beer.
Yeah, look, some of that is true, but yeah, I don't have a counterpoint to that. You're right. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. But look, there is some good news for people who don't like to wake up early. So a neurologist at Northwestern University who wasn't involved with this particular study explained that some patients might find that their natural sleep window happens from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m., but they are rarely able to go to bed before 10 p.m. because of work and family obligations. I totally agree with this. They will still not be able to sleep past 3 a.m., but will then be sleep deprived the following day, she said. That's totally true.
Yeah.
That's 100% true because it doesn't even matter what time I go to sleep. If I go to sleep at 3 in the morning, I'm waking up before 5:30.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
No, that's super tough. In all seriousness, guys, I have tremendous sympathy for the larks among us. And so because they're gonna get up at 5:30. There's nothing they can do about it. I eventually can train my body to get up at a later time again once I get past the kids and the extreme work and all that stuff. And if you go to some days you're gonna go to bed late. So for me, I gotta have 6 hours of sleep. And so that's Ariana Huffington, who's
darling, you need a nap, darling.
8 is not nearly enough. I asked her once, so how many hours are we supposed to get? 10.
Oh, come on.
I was like, when do we work? When do we live?
No, I find that offensive.
Okay, I know. Well, I mean, bless your heart, if you can get 10 hours every day, go for it, right? It sounds amazing. But anyways, I gotta get 6, because if I don't get 6, today I didn't get 6, I got like 5 hours. I woke up early for no reason, around 5:40. Oh no, what if I'm a lark? Okay, I found out what a lark is, and I'll tell you in a second. Okay, but I've been tired the whole day, except you can't notice because too much, too strong. Okay, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. No, but seriously, I have 3 cups. For me, 3 cups is a lot. And on 3 cups, I'm like, let's do this. But what winds up happening on a day where I didn't get 6 hours is at around 8, 9, definitely 10 o'clock. Oh man, I'm Rocky in like Rocky 3. I've been pummeled for 3 movies in a row. And I'm like, boom, boom, boom. I gotta get sleep. And I am literally happier when I get more sleep. I feel much more refreshed, energetic, and ready to tackle the world. When I don't have enough sleep, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. I do find it interesting that you need stimulants to get through your day at work, but I guess it is what it is.
Interesting, okay. By the way, I just found out through Brett that larks are birds that sing in the morning. Now, I'm not buying it, but I'm kidding. Thank you for reminding me, Brett. Reminding me. Anyways, so bottom line, guys, is that my analysis of that science is that it doesn't really matter what your sleep pattern is. So you could be just as effective as an early riser. Of course, when I do rise early and no one else is up and the kids aren't up, walking outside, exercise, bit too much that early in the morning, but taking a walk.
I love it that early.
Having coffee in an empty, quiet house by yourself. Those are wonderful moments.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So you could enjoy your life so much if you're an early riser, but of course you can enjoy your life just as much, if not more, if you're a late riser. So don't believe the hype about the old wives' tales of, oh no, the guy who wakes up early is definitely gonna be more successful and happier and all that stuff. No, that's garbage. It's not true at all. Just wake up whenever you wake up and you'll be 10 times better off not stressing about it. There, I solved it. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, all right. I know we did that story on a lark, but I think it worked out pretty nicely. Dad joke. We're down. All right, so guys, we gotta go. I don't know what you're doing. Why are we still here? We gotta go. You know why? You're about to take a deep dive with Jordan Uhl. He's on Twitch. It's happening now. Twitch.tv/TYT. Go for a dive.
It's sink or swim.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow.